Loneliness is particularly acute in large estates. That's how she felt all the time. It seems that you call someone, and the answer will be an echo, as if in the Rocky Mountains. She looked at the happy family, where the father and mother were holding their daughter by the hands, at the worried people who were scurrying about their business here and there. And she herself felt like a neglected household item, a beautiful, slender, fair-haired girl, but unfree, like a bird entangled in a snare. She was supposed to marry a mad duke who had behaved in wars. Such a dramatic fate was predicted for her by the system. Everything that came to her mind about such a prospect, for nothing. She couldn't believe that this could even happen. A man kisses a woman on the top of her head. Children hug her by her wide skirt. A young black man says he feels bad without her. His blue eyes are full of incredible warmth and tenderness. He firmly holds her thin, tender body in his arms and kisses the crown of her head. Her cheeks are burning. And these children, a small, fair-haired, green-eyed boy and an older black boy with turquoise eyes, are also not good without her. Children's love cannot be bought. It can only be won, and only unobtrusive love. It seems that a little more, and the black guy will simply suffocate her in this passionate and at the same time tender embrace. This is some kind of mistake, isn't it? Everything was imagined completely differently. A few months before, in the Duchy of Sonberg, a family with 2 daughters gathered at the dinner table. The older girl accidentally made a noise, dropping a table knife on the marble floor. A smaller, dark blonde girl. Her name is Karen. She is the youngest daughter of the Duke of Sonberg. She glanced at her sister with a sense of self-importance. The girl's arrogance is emphasized by her 2-spotted outfit. Blonde Duchess Claudia Sonberg, touching the corners of her lips with a napkin, warned the older girl to be more careful with the knife. The blonde girl apologized out of embarrassment. This is Elsha, the firstborn of the Duke of Sonberg. Her eyelashes are as Nordic, blonde as her hair, still quite a child but looks unhappy. It had been 6 months since they had dined with this family. Then Duke Wallen Sonberg told Elsha to pull herself together, because in a month she is to marry Duke Isbel, and it seemed to her that she was suffocating. The girl was upset and surprised. How did you get married? Implied? Why did no one even inquire about her will? Is it true that her father considers her a thing? If her memory serves, it was Duke Isbel who began to bring to an end the years of war that had been going on since time immemorial between the Sunrail Empire and the neighboring kingdom of Silvoa. On the other hand, in order to achieve this goal, he turned even enemies, even allies, into ice statues. Is he obsessed with war? It seems that he killed his own brother to become the head of the family, a person about whom there are terrible rumors. The girl sat terrified. And she should marry such a creepy man? Dad said that this is the order of His Majesty the Emperor, and it cannot be changed. The head of the Grand Duchy cannot remain alone forever. They saw in her a suitable age and status candidate. Didn't her father tell her? The girl said that it was the first time she heard such a thing. Wallen Sonberg looked meaningfully at his eldest daughter, Lady Elsha, with green eyes. This is how it is. In that case, say it now. She should hurry up and start preparing already. The girl asked to wait. Duchess Claudia said that she would take responsibility for preparing the bride for marriage. The father summed up what he had said. Won't add another word. The smaller girl, Karen, changed the subject and asked her father about plans for her upcoming birthday. That was what worried her the most. The older girl reasoned how preparing for Karen's next birthday could be more important than her future marriage and methodically cut the food on her plate. It was always like that in this family. It does not exist for them, even for Dad. It was like that from the beginning. She remembered how lonely it was when she was sick, forgotten by everyone on a large bunk bed in a room furnished with dark wood. She remembered the wet compress on her forehead and how between coughing fits she heard some noise outside the door. Curiosity was greater than weakness, and the girl got up to see what was happening there, outside the door. One girl carried a stack of tablecloths, another a basket of flowers. A few more people were walking down the hall, looking concerned. The girl asked what was going on today. The maid with the basket of flowers asked in surprise, didn't she know it was Miss Karen's birthday today? Miss Elsha will also join in the celebration, won't she? The girl thought about what to answer, and she said that she was not feeling well. Therefore, one should refrain from feasting. Her face was burning with heat. Her look was tired. The upset child returned to his wide bed. Miss Elsha and Miss Karen are such opposite destinies. They have a common father but just different mothers. Come to think of it, Miss Elsha's birthday was never celebrated. After all, the girl's birthday is the anniversary of the untimely death of the former wife of Duke Valen Sonberg, a fair-haired beauty. Her mother died shortly after a difficult childbirth. Therefore, from birth, the child is completely alone and is not needed by anyone. Little Elsha remembers this fact and sobs bitterly into the pillow. It is associated with trouble. Claudia became her father's second wife, and her an evil stepmother. The woman has a confident look. She silently shows her tongue as if hinting at how agile she is. The Duchess is not interested in Elsha's well-being, because a year after Valen's marriage to Claudia, they had a daughter, Elsha's half-sister Karen, and, it seems, she was pampered from birth. Everyone did not like the Duke's firstborn. Remembering her story, Elsha continued to chew schnitzel in silence. She remembered numerous moments when her own father and stepmother avoided her. Now it dawned on her that there was nothing she could do about it. Dark-eyed Karen mused aloud that she was worried about her sister. She will become a Grand Duchess, but she does not know how to use magic at all, the most necessary skill of all aristocrats. Elsha sipped her drink from a tall glass, only glancing down at the little upstart. She is already used to her sister's daily bullying, and she was used to asserting herself at her expense. Claudia noted that indeed Elsha has no abilities for magic or social interaction, but there is no need to worry. In the house of the Grand Duke, Elsha won't embarrass their family with her behavior. With his eyes downcast, Valen said that he had thought about giving Karen his blessing to become the Duke's wife. And Karen does not want to live on the edge of the world, where there is nothing, only snow. Duchess Sonberg protested categorically. She was not going to give her precious daughter to a barbarian from a distant village. Yes, Karen is so important, Elsha thought. Mala continued to point out to her father that her sister was called the burden of the Sonberg family. If it continues like this, she will become a laughing stock in secular society because of her sister. Is it her fault? Elsha thought, chewing the next piece of schnitzel and silently swallowing the insult along with the food. They don't even understand that they themselves have co-created it. Claudia continued her point. Yes, it's not just Elsa's problem, it's the whole Duchy of Sonberg's problem. Valen set the glass down on the table with an annoyed clank. He was caught by these windings. The Duchess turned to Elsha, asking what her attitude was to all this. The woman behaved aggressively. Elsha, on the other hand, said that she completely agrees with her thesis. That if she married the Grand Duke, she would be a disgrace not only to their ducal family, but to the entire empire. The girl laughed loudly. Her cheeks turned pink. Did they forget? The father and stepmother stare intently into the girl's face. She recalled that all her homeroom teachers were devoted to Karen. The family sacrificed everything that belonged to Elsha for the sake of their precious little one. She says the reason she is being married off is to protect her sweet Karen and to keep her reputation in front of His Majesty. The family uses her for their own selfish purposes. Claudia was furious. Is Elsha questioning her father's decision? Elsha, getting up from the table, says no. She doesn't want to offend anyone, she just states. And I don't even care about the fact that it's just being used. The girl defiantly left the table. Since they were going to take advantage of her to the very end, why shouldn't she use their help a little to prepare for her ideal marriage? A month later, a carriage drawn by 2 bay horses races through a snowy forest. The road is very long, through the whole empire. Elsha was very cold, and her soul was not cheerful. The blonde wraps herself in her fur coat and thinks that she cannot say that the preparation was perfect. But she at least had time to worry about something in advance. In the carriage opposite Elsha sits an elderly woman named Marcia. She wipes her abundant tears with a handkerchief. Elsha asks her not to cry and thanks her for her constant and huge support. A woman with the exclamation, "Lady!" looks up at Elsha with turquoise eyes. Her nose is rubbed from the constant touch of the handkerchief. This is a farewell to Marcia. She always did literally everything for Elsha. But it's a pity that she can't take a few trusted maids with her. The girl looks seriously at the snow. In addition, the person with whom she will spend the rest of her life is considered obsessed with war. Elsie is very afraid of this thought. The more she thinks about it, the more anxiety and danger she feels. But the fact that she is leaving her native home is not so bad. At least the gloating will end. Maybe she will be able to build a new good life. Finally, the horses stopped. They arrived. Elsa stepped on the cobblestones with her neat pink shoe. Lady Sonberg was greeted on arrival by a middle-aged blonde man with glasses. The butler politely said that he was glad to see her, smiled kindly, and bowed before her. The girl looked around and thought that there was an incredible amount of snow around her. Everywhere she looked, everything was as white as milk. This is where she will live from this moment on for the rest of her life, in the land of endless snow. And she looked at the carriage after her. Along with her movement, her unhappy childhood receded, and the countdown to her new existence began. Everything starts as if from a clean sheet, or rather from a clean, boundless snowplane. Where is he? Where is the future formidable man? Thought the girl, standing at the front door of the palace and looking around. That's how the meeting is. Is it her curse, to be like the fifth wheel to the carriage? A little mastering her unhappy mood, Elsa politely and with a charming smile asked the butler, "Where is His Highness, the great Duke of Isabella?" Suddenly, she heard a squeaky child's voice behind her. They were asking her who she was. This was definitely not the person she had hoped to meet. It seems that she is not as happy here as she is at home. Surprise appeared on his face. The girl looked around and saw two small children in front of her. The worried butler looked like it was a nasty surprise. Not cute kids. Neither she nor they managed to make a good first impression. A very serious older black boy with turquoise eyes hid the younger, and obviously very important to him. A green-eyed crying child was hiding behind him. Elsa, overcoming anxiety, politely explained that she was the bride of the Grand Duke. The children were extremely surprised. The black boy even seemed angry. The little one shouted, "No!" He had not heard that His Highness the Grand Duke was planning to marry, and even if he had married, he certainly would not have chosen such an unsuitable person as her. What did he say now? Does he think that she is not worthy of him? The girl felt proud in a lush pink dress, which seemed to show all available textures of fabrics, and a white fluffy mantle. The older boy shouted that she was a fraud and had to get out of here immediately. Elsa, on the other hand, thought that she had just arrived and was already in a very bad situation. Emotions of anger and worry appeared on her face, and everything darkened, either from unpleasant sensations or from the cold or all together. And she angrily asked who they were, these children. While choosing her words, Elsa put her open palms in front of her so that there would be no fraud, and she offered to just calmly discuss everything and stop using this dangerous magic. It seems that the manipulation worked. The boy became calmer and more confident. I wondered what level of magic she was wary of. With one hand he continued to block his brother, with the other he supported his side. Noticing the surprise of the stranger, the boy assumed that she was a commoner, incapable of magic, and how then is she going to become an aristocrat and the wife of a Grand Duke? A snowflake appeared in his hand. Elsa cleared her throat in disbelief and confirmed the little one's assumption that she lacked the stars from the sky when it came to magic. But she really is both a bride and a duke's daughter, so she is definitely not a commoner. It was her turn in the dialogue, and she repeated her question. Who are they? She was already pretty cold, despite the warm fur coat up to her heels. The smaller boy burst into tears and leaned against his brother's arm. This question put the boy in a dead end. He was startled because for the first time he met a person who has no idea who they are. The children, it seems, were not cold at all in their thin clothes. The polite butler quietly showed Elsa over his shoulder that these were the children of His Majesty the Grand Duke, Mr. Wilbert and Mr. Hugh. At the moment, they are under his care. If Elsa remembers everything correctly, the former Duke is the older brother of the current Grand Duke. That is, the girl guessed, he adopted his nephews after the death of his brother. It is surprising that she was not warned about such an important fact. Does this mean that Elsa is the adoptive mother of these children? Wilbert launched a big magical snowflake at Elsa. The girl darkened with horror. Elsa's conclusion sounded out loud, so it shocked not only her, but also the boys. Everyone had wide open eyes and mouths. The eyes of the children really reflected fear. Is it true and it is possible with them? A snowflake cut open the girl's face, and a drop of the same color as her eyes slowly crawled out of the scratch. And a severed lock of blonde hair also fell. Wilbert cursed in exasperation. I wonder why the children are more scared and surprised than she is. Although her injury is primarily their merit, she definitely did not expect such a meeting. Well, it's still better than being ignored. Elder Wilbert protects younger Hugh. Elsa looks in surprise into the eyes of the smaller boy. Tears have appeared in his eyes. The frightened child habitually buried his nose in his older brother's shoulder. That is why he is so timid and nervous around all strangers, the girl thought. The darker earth itself stood from the ninth wave of emotions. They are so small that a single scratch can bring them to tears. Elsa remembered what she herself felt at Hugh's age, when some life injustice happened. She didn't have a shoulder to lean on, so she had to toughen up emotionally. The girl crouched down next to the boys so that her eyes were about the same level as theirs, and politely apologized for scaring the little ones. Her excessively lush pink skirt covered all the steps. This unexpected apology genuinely surprised Wilbert. Bilyavka added that she was glad to meet them. She put her hand on her heart and said her name and title and then asked the boys to name themselves. They looked at her like kittens that accidentally ran out not at their mother's call, but at someone else's, surprised and not knowing what to do. Finally, the older boy hesitantly called himself Wilbert. Hugh, it seems, could not speak. His elder brother introduced him. The kid continued to hide behind his brother's back, tears still quivering in his eyes. What a sensitive baby. Elsa beamed and said that now she finally understood that it was Mr. Wilbert and Hugh. She said this with a smile and as if squinting from the blinding sun, and tried to wipe the blood from her face. Suddenly, Hugh poked his finger at the girl. She guessed that he was worried about the blood on her cheek and explained that she shouldn't worry, because she had never received such scratches in her life. Wilbert acted like a grown man. He took the girl by the hand, apologized for attacking her, and said that she had an injury because of him, so they will take care of her, which made her very confused. The boys looked at Elsa as if they were her personal knights who would protect her forever now. Wilbert, with the dignity of a master, ordered her to follow them. Hugh didn't cry anymore. The blonde went to the hall but continued to assure that no compensation was needed. The older boy called someone named Toman. The butler answered, and without further instructions called for him. Elsa was taken to a room for first aid. Didn't they sometimes overdo it? The girl, looking in the mirror, could not recognize herself from the number of applied bandages all over her head. Toman explained, "It all seems out of place, but Wilbert's mother was physically weak. Even from a seemingly insignificant scratch, she lay in bed for a long time. Therefore, he asks for a little patience. That's how it is." Elsa is surprised, but for Mr. Wilbert's peace of mind, this excess can be tolerated a little. It was much warmer in the room. But how will she appear to the groom in this form? The girl kept the mirror in her hands because she was thinking, something is wrong in this story. The children's parents died early and they were adopted by their own uncle, who is called obsessed with war. Toman once again apologized for the inconvenience and explained that he had planned to tell the boys everything when he returned from the Grand Duke's expedition, but his trip was taking too long. To tell the truth, they were also expecting a bride later, only at the beginning of the year. These words of the butler greatly embarrassed the girl. It turns out that they did not even prepare for the wedding ceremony. She explained that she was in a great hurry to get married. There must have been some misunderstanding, because it was considered the key event of her entire life. She was not even given a choice. Everything was done against her will. But Toman bowed and put his hand to his heart and protested that it was his fault and that he was very sorry that it had happened. And he apologizes for the impolite meeting without honor. Elsa sadly said that it was no longer so important to her. You won't change anything. And she wondered when exactly His Highness the Grand Duke should return to the palace. The man, looking a bit confused, said that his master had been scheduled to return from his trip last week. At least that's how it was planned, and he took supplies for such a period. However, Toman recently received a letter from the Duke, the content of which is that he will not be able to return by the appointed time, and showed the mentioned document. That's all he knows so far. Elsa angrily exclaimed, "How come? He has to raise his boys." Who but she knew how traumatic it is for a child to be left without attention. Toman replied that yes, she was right. The Grand Duke worries about the boys, but he is often absent due to unforeseen circumstances, because he cannot ignore the Emperor's instructions. The war is over, but the situation on the border with the former feuding kingdoms is still unstable. Both the previous Grand Duke and his father, Stefan Eisbel, and mother were also involved in this. Tommen found those times, and the children just as often had to be left alone. And as for their grandmother, she fell ill and is currently recuperating in a mansion in a warm climate. That's how it is. Elsha doesn't care, or is her impression of the place very different from what she got based on the capital's rumors? But it's strange to leave children alone in a huge mansion. Elsha again tries to conquer Wilbert. That's all. There were many misunderstandings between them, but from this moment they will become a family. She offered to start with a closer acquaintance. No need to flatter him. Let her calm down and spend her time as she pleases until the return of His Majesty the Grand Duke. The boy folded the book, got up from the table and left. The girl looked at the door in surprise. Hugh was looking in. So, as she expected, there was a rude response. But she is not one of those, it quickly seems. Her appearance has become even more determined. Having familiarized herself with the palace of really huge dimensions, the girl reasoned that all this has no meaning. She can't even get close to Wilbert. She asked his nanny, whose head was also spinning, why these children had such busy schedules. They are always busy with something. Wilbert reads books. Even at lunch they sit at a distance. When Elsha offered the children to drink ginger tea together, she made sure that the children deliberately avoided her. Their reaction looked like a predatory bear pounced on the bunnies. If she finds a common language with these children, it will solve the problem of her arrival. In other words, it will be easier for her to spend time in this mansion. It's a good plan, and she will follow it. But what can she do? Guys avoid her. She asked the cook what Mr. Wilbert's favorite food was. But the girls who served in the kitchen were surprised by this question. They didn't know. They said that Mr. Wilbert is a complex person. He turns a blind eye to nutrition. Therefore, he often does not even eat. And Mr. Hugh eats literally anything and never said what he liked best. And Mr. Hugh. The girls were at a loss as to what to say. Elsha concluded, either a monotonous diet or not interested in food at all. She asked everyone in the village, and no one knows about the tastes of children. All day, Elsha tried to find at least one thing that the children would like. It seems that they are not the only ones who show special caution about this. It's a feeling. She understands everything, but she remembered herself as a little girl who also closed herself off from everyone. Everything is not as she wanted. The situation is under control. She felt like a little girl running away from a giant. Suddenly, a real giant appeared behind her. He turned out to be a chef. He says carrot pie. This made the girl very happy. Some of the servants in the house are even too strong by human standards. After all, they work for a war-obsessed man, so you have to be appropriate. Well, guess what he meant by carrot cake? Mr. Wilbert and Mr. Hugh like to eat carrot cake. He found those times when they had to eat food that didn't taste good to them for a piece of carrot cake. The chef loomed over the girl like a rock. It seems that he is a real professional, attentive. Oh, yes, indeed, remembered the cook. But since the death of their father, the girl continued, the children did not feel any desire to eat carrot cake, no matter how many times they made it. Here's how, the future Archduchess stated, looking at the motley servants. The fragile girls could barely reach the breasts of the giant stout man. Wilbert was fond of science, an incredibly persistent boy. He read too much to exhaustion, because he still could not find an answer to a certain question that worried him. And at that moment, this annoying Elsha appeared with tea and an offer to chat. This irritated him even more. He scratched his head and said he had nothing to talk about with her. The girl said he looked pale. He is still a child, so it is important to rest more and overexert yourself less so as not to slow down development. And she tried to stretch out her hand to stroke him. He snapped at her to stop and not disturb him. In order to achieve his goal, the future Duke needs to learn a lot. The boy wondered when she would finally surrender, the same as the others. And talking to a nice girl who doesn't even know how to use magic is just a waste of time. The girl was confused by this answer, and she silently went out the door and walked down the hall. This time in her hands was a tray with freshly baked aromatic carrot cake. Elsha apologized for the long wait and went to see Wilbert again. He asked what this time, and saw a carrot cake. He doubted if it was him, but it looked like it was. The pastry smelled too tempting. The top of the cake was smeared with sugar fondant. Crouching down opposite the boy so that their eyes met at the same level, the blonde continued to insist on persuading Wilbert to taste at least one bite, and he finally agreed to taste. Elsa seemed to be enjoying herself more than even Wilbert, who was visibly enjoying his favorite dish. He devoured piece by piece and could not stop. It seems that Wilbert himself was surprised that he ate the whole cake in one go. The boy squirmed because of the realization of his over-credibility, and because his appetite was so played out. Elsa laughed, explaining that she was very worried that Mr. Wilbert would like her baking because she was trying so hard. Now, thanks to his apparently high rating, he feels relieved. Wilbert haughtily excused herself that she did not quite understand everything. In fact, he just felt nostalgic. A blush played treacherously on his cheeks. Elsa folded her arms across her chest and sweetly asked what exactly the carrot cake reminded him of. She looked at the child with great affection. A blush of pleasure played on her cheeks. Wilbert noticed and exclaimed what was wrong with her face. Elsa said that everything is fine. It's just that this pie is loved all over the continent, but further west, in Iceberg, San Leila, Lucivar, the recipes differ. So she decided to use a recipe from the Lucivar region. The boy assumed that this region bordered Lunamont. Why did she decide to use a little-known recipe? Elsa explained that this is because it was there, in the border region, that Clara, Wilbert's mother, was born. That is, she tried to cook something that would be associated with mother's affection. In response, the boy uttered only one word: Mom. It seems that this girl does not possess magic in the popular sense, but she understands something more effective. Elsa asked if good memories came to mind. She smiles slyly, but kindly. No way. It seems that Wilbert is a tough nut. He doesn't give in. The boy said that his mother baked a very dry cake. It tasted bitter. She did not cook so well. And he blushed deeply because he had inadvertently praised Elsa's cooking in this way. Bilyavka asked if this could be considered a compliment. Wilbert replied that even though his mother almost never cooked, sometimes she still tried to bake a delicious cake. I remembered my beautiful mother who looked so cute with huge tongs and holding a plate with a pie in her hands. He was very happy about this and ran to meet with open arms. Elsa lowered her eyelids to her rosy cheeks, one of which still had a patch stuck to it, and said dreamily that her mother must have treasured him very much. Did she hit the mark this time? He answered yes. The boy seemed to be shaking from emotional overstrain. He sat hunched over and did not look at the interlocutor. His hands clenched into fists in despair. But how did she get such a delicious cake? He even shouted this phrase and looked very excited. Maybe he was trying to hide his anxiety behind this cry. Elsa raised her finger like a teacher and assumed that it was possible because the winter carrot is very sweet and tasty. Even this year's harvest was the best in the last few years. Wilbert was surprised. He must have heard of winter carrots for the first time. Even the Duke's daughter does not know how to use magic, but she knows how to cook deliciousness from interregional ingredients. Elsa was delighted with this compliment. This is the best thing she has heard in her entire life. The boy wondered where she got such skills from. Is there a good reason? The girl closed her eyes and showed with a bitter smile that this was too sad a story for his sensitive soul. She doesn't want a good kid like him to hear her. Wilbert also closed his eyes and denied in a rather arrogant tone that he was preparing to become the future Grand Duke. No need to treat him like a small child. Elsa became sad and spoke. She said that her mother died after she was born, so because of that, the girl has no memories of her. The boy was not happy that he asked. He was staring blankly in front of him. He was interested in where she got her cooking skills from, but for some reason he got a completely different answer. Then he looked at Elsa and asked what this had to do with her culinary talents. Then the girl said that her mother was replaced by the maid Maria, her mother's closest friend. Remembering her, the girl seemed to find herself among wonderful, fragrant flowers. Those memories were so pleasant. How good that this simple but kind person was in her life. She imagined how Maria knelt down in front of her in the same way, to be at her level, and told something cheerfully. The girl listened with delight. They were always good and interesting together. Maria told Elsa a lot about her mother. Due to the lack of memories, she wanted to recreate some of her mother's favorite dishes. That's how she got this useful hobby. So the girl began to explore the culture and recipes of different regions after that. Ma was fond of baking cupcakes and cakes. She learned to cook carrot cake, which she treated him to. Wilbert looked at Elsa seriously and said that he understood that she was telling the truth, but wasn't it better to leave such work to the servants of his house? This is one of their duties. She replied that they were each busy with their own work, so she did not want to distract them with her own selfish desires. She had a lot of free time, because all her tutors were given to her younger sister Karen, the daughter of her evil stepmother. Elsa pretended that it was terribly fun. Wilbert guessed that this was the main reason why the girl had not mastered any of the magic. There was simply no one to teach, and the servant does not possess magic at the level that is necessary for an aristocrat. But now she is a very cheerful young lady, although at the same time she differs slightly from her peers in the lack of some social skills. He said that she was treated horribly. The girl was disappointed in her efforts. She tried so hard to present everything in a positive way, it was revealed. Perhaps she never managed to recreate at least a fraction of positive memories for him. She apologized for this to the boy, said that she shouldn't apologize for it, which surprised her a little, and in a serious tone, he continued that he wanted her to make this cake again. Embarrassed, he blushed up to his ears. She blushed in response and was very surprised. It seems to be love at first sight for carrot cake. He warned against preconceptions and explained that he just wanted to treat his younger brother. The girl was happy. Of course she agrees, and she also knows how to cook on the grill. How about meat and vegetables on coals? Realizing that he was being manipulated, he told them to stop immediately. So Elsa became a little closer to Mr. Wilbert. Now, when they met in the corridor and she greeted him, he was already warming up to her with a satisfied smile and a blush on his cheeks, briskly walking and enthusiastically waving his fists. She seemed to be ignored. She began to suspect that he wasn't just hiding from her behind the books. From the moment Elsa made a carrot cake for Wilbert, he began to avoid her even more. It seems that fate itself is against them becoming a family. She was very worried about these circumstances. It was so lonely. It would probably be better if she gave up and stopped bothering him. Walking down the corridor, Elsa heard some argument. Someone told Hugh that no, it wasn't. She wondered what was going on behind the door. Brothers usually practice together. Yeah, that Wilbert is in the yard practicing fencing on wooden swords with a trainer. She asked herself if nothing would happen if she peeped a little, and quietly opened the door. The teacher was standing outside the door next to Hugh, who was hugging a stuffed toy. The teacher behaved aggressively. He slapped his hand on the table and told him to do what he wanted. The child was frightened and pressed the toy even tighter. The tutor boasted that he taught everything, chewed everything like a small child, and can't believe that even after that, Hugh can't use low-level magic. He is from the Isbell family, so why can't he do anything? The boy cried, burying his nose in the toy and hugging it tightly as if alive. The teacher can't understand what kind of future Hugh is leading himself to if he can't even muster a small apology for his mistake. The teacher looked angrily at the child through the round lenses of his glasses. He thinks that Hugh is incapable of learning or apologizing because he has practically lost all the ability to speak. Elsa stood in the doorway, full of anger and surprise. As? He can't talk? The teacher continued, what Hugh apparently still didn't understand. But throughout the empire in the Grand Duchies, powerful and sophisticated magic was a given of an aristocrat. At this rate, he will become a disgrace to the Isbell family. The man approached the frightened child in the shelter, and threatened, probably to prove his mind, he will have to grease his hands. Then Elsa could not listen to this calmly. She can't believe that he behaved so brazenly with the baby. He is well aware that he cannot speak. Hugh is still very young. No, if she, an outsider, comes in now, she will only cause trouble. The boy was crying uncontrollably, hugging his stuffed ermine. The teacher asked if Hugh could hear him at all, to give it back immediately, and began to tear out the toy. The boy was reaching for his plush friend, tears running down his cheeks. It does not befit a young aristocrat to constantly carry around with sichkas. With these words, the man took the ermine to the window and was about to throw it down, and blurted out nonsense. That's why he doesn't have parents. The child cried with all his might. The braggart finished off the boy with wicked words that this little fool did not deserve a single good thing in this world. The girl ran up to the teacher and grabbed his hand, which he was using to hold the head of a toy ermine. She can't just stand there and watch. She took the toy, and the teacher looked at her with anger from under his forehead and held his injured hand. She exclaimed that parents are not the main indicator of talent. Mr. Hugh is a small child. He hasn't even learned to express his feelings yet. It is clear that it will be difficult for him to learn magic right away. The boy gasped in surprise as he watched this scene, tears still welling up in his eyes. On the contrary, the teacher has no right to accuse him of incompetence. All his problems in education are the incompetence of the teacher himself. On the objection that he could act, Elsa declared that he was unworthy of a student like Hugh and told him to get out at once. There are things that no one else can do. For some reason, he does not understand at all why she broke in and interferes in the educational process. And who is she anyway? She needs to get out of here. She is an outsider. Handing little Hugh his ermine, Elsa announced that she was not just anyone. The teacher angrily looked at her with surprise. Then who is she? She is the Grand Duchess of Isbala. The girl said it in an icy tone and with full authority, and added that she is the mother of these children. Her whole posture and expression radiated dignity and confidence. The teacher stood with his mouth open in confusion. He paled with surprise and bile. The Duke entered the room. The master looked at the teacher with icy eyes. His unmoved expression showed hidden incredible anger, like a volcano about to erupt. Another moment, and he will turn this brat on the ice. The girl was frightened, and her jaw also dropped, and her pupils narrowed. Elsa looked at the Grand Duke half-turned and seemed like a little girl. "His Majesty is the Archduke. Does this mean?" The young man continued to stand silently, black with blue eyes in a long cloak trimmed with luxurious fox fur. "This is His Majesty." Majestic and beautiful profile. Without turning his face, the handsome man looked curiously through the long bangs and said to the bride, "Who are you?" His eyes looked like sapphires. She frowned and looked through the saucers of her red eyes. It seems that Elsa's communication skills have fallen to the level of Hugh. She simply pointed at herself with her finger and continued to stare into everyone's eyes. Thinking that the question was his, the teacher reported that he had been personally offered by the ruler of their great Sunrail Empire as a tutor for Hugh. The Grand Duke said he did not ask him. He asked about her, and she was finally able to speak and explain that she was also here at the behest of His Majesty, but she does not know whether she answered correctly. To begin with, does His Majesty know about their marriage? If so, how much does he know? Oh, she can't be silent. The girl squinted in fear. Something needs to be said. Gathering all the courage she could muster, she raised her hand as if in school and announced that her name was Elsa. The young man looked intently at the girl. She darkened and covered herself with sweat. His Majesty the Duke turned to the open door. It was Wilbert who said, "Welcome home," and bowed politely. The Duke looked at him somewhat surprised, only to say, "Absolutely." Elsa looked with her red eyes in bewilderment. The Grand Duke came very close to her and asked again, "Well, yes?" It was very difficult for her to speak. She frowned and put her hands to herself. It seems that Wilbert did not recognize this girl. She was not behaving as usual, unbecoming a duchess. Shyly turned away from the couple. He was embarrassed by her stupor. It seemed to Elsa that she would die on the spot, and the end of the whole relationship. She spent another minute choosing her words. The mighty Duke looked at her curiously, behaved too suspiciously. She just didn't know what to do. Hugh cried, nuzzling his toy ermine. This gave her determination. Once she has already dared, she has no right to be afraid anymore. She said that this was their first meeting. By order of His Majesty, she is to become his wife. Her name is Elshea. She is the daughter of the Duke of the Sonberg family. The Duke said that he was not sure that all the formalities of her becoming his wife had been completed. So what does it produce? She said that she understands everything perfectly, but all these are the consequences of an emergency situation. The girl made a Nixon. I asked, "What kind of emergency?" The tutor behaved too defiantly. This manifested itself in open aggression against Mr. Hugh, whose eyes were filled with tears. Wilbert called out his brother's name in alarm, and the teacher rehearsed, "What?" In addition, he tried to get rid of the doll dear to the young man, so she said that she was already a Grand Duchess to stop him. At the same time, Hugh pointed his finger at the one who offended him and burst into tears again. He snuggled up all the time with his favorite soft toy. The teacher insisted that he was not lying, that it was some kind of mistake. Young Mr. Hugh is still too young. He lacks prudence. That's why he gets angry at his demands. The Grand Duke bowed respectfully to poor Hugh, bowing to the youngest member of the ducal family. The next moment, ice crawled sideways from the Duke. He asked the teacher what else he would say. His eyes burned with a terrible cold fire of fury, like murderous nitrogen. The tutor said nothing. He screamed in terror as he felt his legs freeze. Wilbert, standing with a snowflake at the ready, asked if he had gone home at some point. "Can you help him?" The Grand Duke, having pulled the teacher out of the ice with one hand like a carrot from a bed while removing his shoes, asked if he was ready to resign from his post. The next moment, the owner shooed him in the open door like a hideous frog, saying that careless tutors had no place in their house. The Duke went out into the corridor to consolidate the effect. He told the teacher to get away and not appear here again. He trembled with terror, then clung to his frozen legs and dozed off. Elsa was also trembling. Her cheek was covered with ice. I thought that he freezes everyone who is in the radius of damage, whether enemies or allies. The terrifying Grand Duke. Then he came up and bowed to Elsa, thanking her for her help. The girl just wanted to say that you are welcome, as he added that they still had something to talk about, but first they had to complete the formalities. Elsa did not think that he would mean a wedding. She was standing in front of the big door in a veil and a cherry-colored dress, the cut of which resembled the hot petals of the sun. Behind her stood two friends. 3 days have passed since the return of the Grand Duke. The bride and groom were so preoccupied that they literally did not see each other, and yet, as a result, they will get married. Elsa was worried. On this very day, the polar night begins. For sun-worshipping empires and grand duchies, this night is considered an ominous omen, as it seems to weaken the power of the sun. It is said that in the Grand Duchy these nights can last for months. The girl looks at the reflection. Her birthday and her mother's death coincided with the longest polar night in the capital's history. The Temple of the Sun is full of people. The groom is waiting for the girl in front of the altar. Candles burn like little suns. And for some reason, there are Christian crosses in the Temple of the Sun, some kind of religious eclecticism. The Grand Duke is dressed in a ceremonial cassock with golden epaulets. His cloak is made of the same fabric as Elsie's plume. Enchanting appearance of the bride. She descends almost from under the dome through the air. Looks like a fairy. Now it is clear why their clothes are red. They remind each other of the life-giving sun. She never thought that she would look down on such a big person. Still, magic is strange. His face does not express joy. Rather, it is concentration, tension. Only Elsa does not understand this bright performance. The bridegroom offers her a scarred hand. His palms are so big. Finally, they compared. Does Rolf Eisbel swear to live with his bride, Elsa Sonberg, in sickness and in health? Asks the priest of the Temple of the Sun. The bridegroom swears by the shining sun. A question for the bride. Does Elsa Sonberg swear in sickness and in health to live with her fiancé, Rolf Eisbel? He swears the same. It can be seen that she does not reach his shoulder. The parishioners of the Temple of the Sun rejoice, but brothers Wilbert and Hugh are not happy about this event. Rather, they are disturbing. What awaits them because of this? Elsa reasons that when she looks at such a magnificent action, she completely forgets about the polar night. Brooches, which decorate the bride's outfit, resemble the sun in shape. Finally, all the formalities are over. After all this, she will have time to talk with the Duke. He, like her, looks sad and focused. Plans for the present and the future must be clearly discussed. She was told that on her wedding night, she must give everything to her husband. And she has no idea about etiquette, but she is sure that she will manage. Judging by the appearance of the bride and groom, they do not like talking. The girl changed into a transparent nightgown, and without extinguishing the table lamp, lay on top of Rolf, hugging his leg with her legs. The girl burns with the heat of passion, eyes burn like never before, cheeks also burn. She brought her large, plump breasts closer to his face. She seems to have surprised her husband. The boy did not expect such behavior from a shy girl who could barely pronounce her own name upon meeting her. Horrified, he asks what she is doing. Instead of answering, Elsa playfully and with shining eyes looks passionately at the man from above, like a cat at large prey. When Rolf asked again what she was doing, Elsa looked at him in surprise, not knowing what to answer. She herself did not know. It looks like she was just spamming. She wondered what had happened to her. A few minutes before that, Elsa was sitting by the candle on her knees on the bed, upset. And it seemed to her that she was abandoned and alone. Suddenly, her husband entered the room. He approached the bed, seriously and dignifiedly looked at the half-naked Elsa. The wife said, "Thank you very much," smiled. Narrowing his blue eyes, he said that he hadn't done anything special, so there was nothing to be thankful for. Elsa looked at him in surprise and only expressed her surprise with an exclamation. He married only by order of the emperor. Therefore, as a husband, he will respect her position as a wife as much as possible and will make every effort to ensure that she spends time without any inconvenience. Elsa repeated, "Thank you very much," ready for anything that the angry, war-obsessed man would say. Despite the expectation that he would beat and pull a woman by the braids, he turned out to be such a gentleman. Rolf continued that he currently has no intention of having children. Elsa replied with a smile that she agreed. Ultimately, Mr. Hugh or Mr. Wilbert may inherit his title. The Archduke replied that these children were not the only reason. He does not want Elsa to expect affection and love from him. The girl looked at him alarmed, frightened. Red eyes expressed pain, like wounds of the soul. I was hoping for anything but being ignored. He looked away and, discreetly uttering only one word of apology, stepped away from the bed. The young Archduchess looked sadly at the bed in front of her and thought that when a newly married man says such things to her face after the wedding ceremony, for some reason it still hurts a lot. She just sat on the bed on her knees and helplessly said the word "really" first and then asked to wait. He stopped. Without turning around, the Grand Duke asked what else she wanted to discuss with him. Elsa ran around him, which seemed to shock him. The girl stood in the doorway with her arms crossed so as not to let him out of the bedroom and angrily asked if he treated his children the same way. He looked at her with a look of surprise. He seemed to be holding back his anger, his eyes narrowed. The young woman, still preventing the exit, continued to ask whether his attitude towards children is the same heartless as towards her. He replied curtly that he was only fulfilling his duties as their new father. He was tired of her annoyingness. He was not in the mood for revelations. Elsa asked, "Is that why he brought such an incompetent tutor to such a sweet boy, Hugh?" She was burning with rage. The Grand Duke only clenched his fists. In front of him shone the appetizing forms of a girl with an extremely belligerent attitude. He lowered his face in anger and wanted to say that this tutor, and fell silent with excitement. There is no truth, children. Sometimes the Emperor is wrong, but why does it always go to Rolf? The girl stepped forward, causing Rolf to retort, saying that she was not going to blame or in any way condemn His Majesty's training methods. However, his children now have no adults or friends they can rely on, and she is very sorry for them. At this, the Archduke asked what she proposed to do. Send them to an orphanage? Now Elsa also clenched her fists. She replied that he already realizes that raising children is an important part of their lives. Rolf asked if she wanted to say in her own words that the children lacked love. Elsa replied that it is also important. A father's love and responsibility alone cannot cover all the needs of children. In the upbringing of children, physical education, the surrounding environment, and proper upbringing, proper education are the main factors. These words surprised Rolf. He backed up to the bed because Elsa was coming at him with her fists, and she continued that even without his love, she would remain a Grand Duchess. If he is not going to show love to the children, then he must leave their upbringing to her. And she leaned over him very close, almost stepping on his feet. He had to stop her with his hand and asked her to stop. He began with a promise to give them everything they needed, a beautiful setting, and... At that moment he screamed out of surprise, because he fell, stumbling, and collapsed on his back on the bed. Elsa said, "Everything is over." The Grand Duchess looked at the beautiful face of Rolf, her lawful husband. The situation was comical, but no one laughed. She did it! The man was prevented from getting up by the girl who pressed him to the bed, putting all her weight on his shoulders with her hands. This moment the door opened. The children entered the room without knocking. Wilbert stood in the doorway, followed by Hugh with his favorite toy and a cute cap on his head. Elsa looked back at the children in a panic, taking her hands away from her husband. Rolf's eyes, like hers, were startled. Wilbert asked tritely what these two were doing. Rolf just looked at him with a question in his eyes, trying to fasten his pajamas inconspicuously. Elsa tried to smooth over the situation and covered her breasts with her hand, explaining that they were just... And she didn't finish speaking. That's why Wilbert asked, "What is simple?" Elsa was at a loss as to what to say. Rolf couldn't find words either, just stared in amazement. Wilbert said, "Okay," and began to approach the newlyweds. His hands were belligerently clenched into fists. The boy grabbed Elsa's hand, which she used to cover her breast. She smiled confusedly. The shame is incredible. What could a well-educated boy think, seeing them in such a position? Wilbert, looking into Elsa's eyes with a magnetic look and hypnotizing her, and also realizing that he was doing something very strange, offered to sleep together. Elsa thought that she did not remember him looking at her like that even once. She darkened from surprise. Drops of sweat appeared on her face. The mouth opened involuntarily. Rolf's face suddenly took on a childish look of surprise, and he asked, "How is it together?" The Duchess glanced at Wilbert, who was holding her hand. He began to weave a lie that Miss Elsa had been working tirelessly all the time while Rolf was away, and she slept with him all the time. At the same time, the boy blushed because of the lie and covered himself with sweat, and added that also with Hugh. His hair became so spiky that his cap flew off. Wilbert looked back at Hugh conspiratorially. The kid also got confused. Hugh jumped to his feet and ran to Elsa, grabbing her bare ass, which was covered only by a see-through nightgown. The kid grabbed Elsa's chiffon in such a way, pressing a soft ermine to her leg as if she was really his mother, whom he had been waiting for a long time. The girl felt a rush of tenderness, looking back at the child, and blushed to the tips of her ears. What does it all mean? And Rolf was very surprised by the children's behavior. Wilbert went on to say that poor Hugh cries if he doesn't sleep with Elsa. Without her, he definitely won't be able to fall asleep. At the same time, the little boy was holding Elsa's hand. Suddenly, Hugh burst into tears. Even the toy ermine seemed to be crying. Elsa looked at him. She was still standing red. Tears? Let it not happen at all, but Hugh, it seems, really got used to the role and believed it. Wilbert continued that, for this reason, he asked his lordship not to expel Elsa. She was stunned. Hugh, too. The boy added that it was for his brother's sake. He covered the mouth with a toy. Elsa guessed that it was a conspiracy of the children. They thought that the bride and groom were quarreling, and Rolf was on the verge of throwing Elsa out. Rolf watched dumbfounded. Wilbert began to defend her, saying that he admitted that she was often clumsy, but still she would not do the children any harm. The girl just giggled. Then the gift of speech returned to the Grand Duke, and he said that they had become too close, even though not even a month had passed. He hadn't seen children show their emotions so much in a long time. Hugh was adoringly looking at Elsa, gently holding her hand. Wilbert stared at Rolf with big eyes. The girl confirmed that it was true. Her stunned eyes did not hide her sincere surprise at this surprise. The Grand Duke added that at the same time, and fell silent, looking at the whole company. He hesitated with his decision, which was evident from his hand gesture. Elsa at that moment thought alarmedly, does he really want to expel her? Rolf concluded by saying, "Okay, tonight they'll all sleep together, 4 of them." Elsa and Wilbert were as if struck by thunder and lightning. They looked at the Grand Duke with open mouths. Hugh hugged Elsa's hand tighter and was completely happy. Elsa was extremely confused. Her face contorted in embarrassment and stepped under. She could not believe her ears that Rolf had said that the 4 of them would sleep together tonight. Wilbert also decided to ask again, that is, sleep at 4 with them? The Grand Duke confirmed that it was. Rolf was sitting on the bed with his hands clasped and a Buddha-like expression on his face. The girl tried to unravel the essence of this paradox. So what's on their mind? He just said that he doesn't want to give even an iota of love and care, but now he offers to sleep together. The Duke's daughter has been sent here by order of the Emperor. What are her intentions? So he can't leave her with the children. Thoughts swarmed in his head. Looking at her from under his forehead, he asked if there were any difficulties. She explained that it would be inconvenient. "But it's okay, she agrees," said the girl, noticing the anxiety, confused, blushing Hugh. She squatted next to the little boy and asked in a friendly way if he agreed to sleep together. The boy just smiled sweetly. His cheeks were pink and his eyes were sweet and sleepy. It seems that the girl did not try to fall asleep for the first time. Babies were lying on either side of her. Then Rolf turned his back to the wall. She could not close her eyes. The potential future Grand Duke Wilbert was so small and touching in his sweet sleep. Snoring beside her and seeing the 10th dream, fair-haired little Hugh was generally the embodiment of touching tenderness and slept, enveloped in dreams and holding his toy ermine in his arms. Divicina looked at them with tenderness and thought that they must have been very exhausted since they fell asleep instantly. Children are such children. Only Rolf looked at her with a tired look and a crooked smile. Maybe admired her? He reasoned that the mother should sleep between the children. This is the custom. Why is she looking at him like that? Elsa, who was still chaste, was ashamed of his frank look, and he continued to look without looking away. Little Wilbert suddenly dreamed of the last thoughts he had before going to sleep. He began to beg Rolf through a dream not to expel Elsa. Wow, this is the power of emotions. Both new parents thought at the same time. The blonde was drooling from the fact that the children were worried about her. Rolf noted that she managed to win the attention of the grumpy Wilbert. The wife noted that it is difficult to establish a relationship with the boyfriend. He is desperately trying to grow up faster, to cause Rolf as little trouble as possible. But Wilbert is still a child, and words and actions must be chosen so as not to cause harm. These words made the Grand Duke very angry. He looked at his wife with hatred and asked if she sometimes hinted that he didn't care about Wilbert. The newly minted Archduchess seems to have set herself up for a real fight. She added that now it is clear why children constantly feel anxious. The shocked Archduke turned away, and Elsa did the same. Shivering, but not at all from the fact that she was cold in her transparent nightgown, and from the coldness of her husband's eyes, who married her not out of his own will, but only by order of the Emperor. Love should be formed in a completely different way. The Archduke couldn't sleep either. He stared into the night with his icy eyes. He remembered the moment when the Emperor, sipping wine, informed him that he had decided on the candidacy of his wife. With his love for eccentric antics, Emperor Adler, the ruler of the Sanrei Empire, resembled the infamous Herod. He wondered if Rolf had already chosen a place for the celebration. Maybe the border? The knight was preparing for battles, not feasts, so he added that he would like to go home after the expedition was over. Suddenly, the Emperor begged Rolf for a glass of wine. Does he not obey his orders? Adler got up from the throne and went to the bowed-down Grand Duke, who asked for forgiveness. And now he cannot sleep in the same bed with the woman assigned to him. Seeing that she finally closed her eyelids, he quietly got out of bed. An idea dawned on him. Then he bent over Elsa and extended his large, scarred hand over her neck. But in a moment, his predatory grip weakened. He hesitated. She herself was still a child, so tender and ruddy. That fragile neck of hers fit almost entirely in his palm. Platinum hair was scattered on the pillow like jewels. The blush was smoothly shaded under the blonde eyelashes. Rolf could feel her hushed breathing, aimed with a slanting blue gaze, too defenseless and tender. If he presses a little harder, it will break easily. Suddenly, Hugh moved closer to Elsa and pressed himself against her shoulder. Watching Wilbert sleep trustingly next to her, Rolf thought that if Elsa was a spy sent by the Emperor, she could easily lose her trust in people. But, without finishing the thought, he climbed back to his seat, agreed that he is a really bad father, this is a fact, and adjusted the bedspread over such a small and gentle Wilbert, not at all like the brave older brother homeschooler, which he tried to be during the day. Pulling the blanket over Hugh as well, Rolf thought that the Grand Duke was not the best of him either. What should he do? He remembered how his brother had entertained little Wilbert, and how tenderly he had treated his golden-haired wife, how Wilbert loved his mother, and how little he reached for him, Rolf, with his tiny flowers of tender hands. Opening her eyes, Elsa noticed that it was already morning. She had a sleepless look. Hugh was also huddled close to her, and Wilbert seemed to be hot under the covers and pulled his arm and leg out from under her. Putting on her slippers, she thought that she felt as if she hadn't slept at all, and she feasted, as befits. She sneezed and thought that if she continued to use this nightgown, she would catch a cold. The girl changed into a simple but elegant amethyst-colored dress and left. Hearing the frightened Wilbert calling her, the girl guessed that he was really upset after yesterday. P ran into the room. The child immediately rushed into her arms since he did not find her in bed in the morning. The Grand Duke also rushed to meet her, but with a different purpose, to drag Wilbert away with the words that he had not kicked her out. It looked like a scene of jealousy. Hugh was crying. The man looked more sleepy and wished Elsa good morning, but he added meaningfully, "Miss." Wilbert scowled, widened his eyes, and snorted, "Miss, what do you mean?" He knew from books when a woman was a mime and when a missus at the same time. The Grand Duke looked either focused or angry. Rolf began with a formal speech, thanking him for the constant support of his children. And he seriously added that he would be happy to see her not only in the role of Archduchess, but also as the mother of their joint children. The girl blushed. Hugh did not hide his joy, and Wilbert smiled smugly. His plan had worked. The girl made a bow with words of thanks for the fact that his lordship accepted her. Rolf added that it was necessary to discuss the rules by which they would live. Everyone looked at the father of the family in surprise. The Grand Duke explained that since they were married at the behest of His Majesty the Emperor, they knew nothing about each other because they grew up in different regions and under the influence of different cultures. It seems that the same applies to the issue of raising children. The children, anticipating the end of all hopes for freebies, rallied. The broad-shouldered, handsome man offered to discuss the rules in order to avoid future conflicts and live in peace and harmony with each other. And I thought about myself before finding out her intentions. At the most serious moment, the smallest member of the family had a loud grumbling in his stomach, and he collapsed. Elsa admitted that it was hers and explained that no one had had breakfast yet. All family members got dressed and gathered at the table to have breakfast in the European manner. Buns, honey, jam, eggs, vegetables, fish. It seems that Rolf is used to solving the problems that arise immediately, because he reminded again that it is time to discuss the issues of the unfinished conversation. Wilbert was clearly not happy with vegetables and fish. This was evidenced by his displeased grimace and refusal to eat. Elsa noticed this and supported her husband's initiative to talk. The girl decided to make another attempt to find out what Wilbert likes and dislikes. Rolf said that before setting the rules, it is necessary to outline the current problems. Elsa only needed these words. She immediately identified the main problem for her, living conditions and the surrounding environment, and at the same time she coughed. The Archduke was surprised that she was cold and informed her that they used magic to regulate the temperature in the room. She put out her wrinkled hands warningly. "Just a little." Suddenly, Tommen spoke up, standing next to him with a gun in his hand. The butler explained that the Grand Duchess grew up in the imperial capital, where the climate is different. Of course, she is cold in these conditions. Rolf noted that in this case the first task is to prepare clothes and other things. Wilbert conspiratorially offered to pick these things together. It seems that he remembered Elsa's revealing nightgown. Hugh nodded happily and raised his hand in agreement and willingness to join. Wilbert sneered, just as Karen had done recently, that Elsa must have terrible taste precisely because of the influence of Southern culture. The adults looked at the boy with horror, while Elsa thought that the situation was getting out of control, since she was even deprived of the opportunity to choose clothes. She tried to explain that the clothes in which she came here were not chosen by her at all. Her stepmother did not like everything she chose, so she ordered everything herself from a famous designer. Rolf summarized that after they decide on the basic rules, they will all go to the city together. The city covered in snow and sugar powder with its small houses with beamed ceilings and warm lights from the inside resembled a German town of the late Middle Ages. And the first better dress resembled a silk dindle, only with sewing, a corset, and an excess of details made of fur, feathers, and frills. It looks like bows have been put on the goose, at least in one color scheme. Hugh and the women of the fashion house were delighted, but Wilbert, and most importantly the faithful it seems, this pretense was not too much to his taste. Wilbert said that it was practical and beautiful, and cursed that the groom could be dressed like that. Rolf discreetly noted that for a hasty choice, it's not bad, but more is needed. Elsa was presented with new outfits until she was tired. The fox clearly liked her. She was already beginning to wonder why they kept serving. The man explained to the girl that the main reason why they are here is to learn more about each other and their culture. The children competed among themselves and with Rolf, who could dress the girl better so that she looked like a truly fairy tale princess. The husband warned the children. Because of the two of them, Elsa found herself in an awkward position, but they continued to pull her by the arms in different directions. Then the Archduke said that there was no need to quarrel. Which dress to buy, they can just buy them all together. He amused and reconciled the children with this. In response to her question when she should wear it all, Rolf said that there were no objections because it was his decision. And rule number 1, he recognizes Elsha as the Grand Duchess and his wife. Therefore, they should communicate as much as possible and he will respect her opinion. But she also has to fulfill her duties as the wife of the Grand Duke. From this moment on, she will be in charge of everything in their house. So he will be able to participate in meetings more often. So he asks her to do her best as the new mistress of the house. And he himself thought that her, as the daughter of a duke, her frugal attitude to finances was incredible. But her emotions are pure, sincere, transparent, and understandable. Very unusual behavior. Catching his melancholy look, Elsha asked what it was. Rolf replied that it was nothing, and that next time they would choose hats for her. The hats were followed by shoes, earrings, and a necklace. Thus, by joint efforts, Elsha became more and more like the mother of Wilbert and Hugh. Elsha was completely exhausted from shopping. She returned in a white and green teal dress and a white cape and turquoise earrings. The girl noted that recently she has become more tired, but now she has a separate room according to rule number 2. Elsha can sleep with the children only if they want it. But once a week they have to sleep in the matrimonial bedroom on the same bed to discuss reports together. She was very upset that she would have to report. Opening the door, she dreamed of resting until suddenly she saw someone's female back in her room. It turned out to be Karen, as always in bows and sequins. She told Elsa that her sister was late. The surprised hostess asked what the uninvited guest was doing here, but she looked at her with a smile. Karen began to tell that at first she was brought to the living room, but since Elsha was too late, the girl, out of boredom, decided to go to her cramped bedroom. Elsha snapped that she didn't mean it, and instead of answering, Karen praised her sister's taste while looking at the dress. When a mesmerized Karen reached for a blue winter dress with a white fox, Elsha unexpectedly protected her personal boundaries, shielding the dresses from the impudent girl. Elsha threatened to touch her things without permission. Karen pretended to be a fool, though she didn't understand why she couldn't. The Archduchess categorically explained that they are not at home. Everything is different in this house, namely, according to the rules of His Majesty, and these dresses are his gifts. In addition, Elsha continued, despite the fact that her eye twitched from irritation, she was forcibly sent to a remote place, which was extremely unpleasant for Karen. Why did she come? Karen lied that the family was so worried about Elsha that they sent her to this distance to check on her sister. Rumors spread throughout the capital that the Archduke had left her alone for a whole month. Elsha justified her husband that it was just a misunderstanding. Karen was glad to be convinced of the truth of the gossip. Then Karen turned to the magic tonic. Is the sister using it correctly? The girl slyly glanced at the bottle with pink balls. Elsha was told to drink it after the wedding. After all, in her current state, she is not suitable for the wife of the Grand Duke. Elsha replied in an icy tone that she was taking it according to the instructions and was waiting for its effect to appear. Karen laughed and told her sister to be strong, because if she becomes a burden for this family, she will simply be thrown out into the cold. The angry Archduchess asked if Karen had come all this way to mock her. She put out her palms as a warning and disappeared. Karen said that I just wanted to borrow some money. Perhaps the girl put all her magical abilities into her gaze. Elsha was shocked. Why didn't her sister just ask her father? He always gave her as much as she needed. Instead, Karen began to grab and throw everything in a row with the demand to shut up and give money, because the younger sister is asking, because she just has problems. A psychotic, hysterical woman with her arms wide open. Elsha did not expect such defiant behavior. Momentarily switching from hysterical to polite pleading, Karen continued to manipulate him. That they are a family. It is necessary to help. Elsha seethed with anger. Really? Earlier, she tried with all her might to become a part of this family. But Karen never even tried to treat her accordingly. She remembered how impudent Karen, encouraged by her mother, decided to wear Elsha's mother's dress to the ball. This was not the first case of a gross violation of Elsha's personal boundaries and memory. Then the stepmother put out her hand with spread fingers, knocking the girl off her feet, so as not to let Elsa take the dress, and said that she was wrong, because this dress was the property of the Duke of Sonberg. The little goat then convinced herself that her mother was right, and that she could easily wear this dress and had the right to anything in this place. Anything for an only daughter. said Claudia. Morally broken, Elsa sat next to a tattered book and was just as defenselessly exposed. She clearly realized that is not a family member. Karen continued to add her point, that for the first time, 10 gold would be enough for her. Elsa restrained herself with her last strength. Her gloved hands involuntarily balled into fists. When the blonde said that she would not give anything, the impudent Karen asked if her sister didn't even have 10 gold coins. In this case, even 5 will do. Having been refused, Karen dared to reach for the necklace that she had dropped a moment ago. Elsa coldly forbade touching. At that, Karen assumed that Elsa just wanted to serve it herself, and hurried faster and stepped on the ornament, wondering why her sister was delaying. Apparently, Claudia raised a real monster, and Elsa's father helped her in this. Finally, Elsa could not stand it and began to beat the insolent upstart. But she did not expect such a turn of events. Something quickly changed in her sister. She rehearsed what she was doing. Elsa said in an icy voice that Karen didn't seem to understand anything at all. "This is all the property of the Grand Duke." "Oh, it seems it really hasn't reached the youngest daughter of the Duke of Sonberg until now." She held her burning cheek. This special item was given to Elsa by His Majesty the Archduke, for his wife, the Grand Duchess. Karen deliberately ignored the warning and showed disrespect. What? Already fully and completely included in the role of the Grand Duke's wife? It's just a disguise, Karen surmised, because it's all the same scum that doesn't represent anything. It is true that Elsa does not know how to use magic, but she clearly has more knowledge and experience than Karen, and unlike her parents' home, she is respected and treated well here. The Grand Duke is even ready to entrust her with the upbringing of his children. He recognizes her as the guardian of her children under Rule Number 3 and based on testing. She is treated fairly. That's why she can't lend money to a girl who misbehaved with the Grand Duke himself. With these words, the Archduchess rang the bell, summoning the servants. Elsa politely asked the maid to take her sister's luggage to the guest room of the servant building, and she added, responding to Karen's indignation, that she could not offer her anything more. Is it on the street? This visit was not what Karen imagined. She clenched her teeth and flew out of Elsa's room like a thunderstorm. The blonde thought about her family, picking up jewelry from the floor. She did not yet know whether they were ready to accept her here as a full member of the family. She remembered how Hugh had lit up when he had found her that necklace that had so attracted her half-sister. This is a gift from the Grand Duke, and it already means a lot to her personally. She promised to do everything possible for this house. Elsa remembered her vow with warmth and trepidation, and she reasoned that she should tell her husband about everything. The girl was worried about why Karen wanted to borrow money from her, why such a long way. She is always given plenty of money. She can buy anything she wants. Is this something she can't tell her parents about? Is it gambling? Someone knocked on the door and the girl invited to enter her room. It turned out to be rosy-cheeked baby Hugh. He looked questioningly at Elsa with his huge emerald eyes. Hugh tried to explain with gestures what exactly was bothering him, but Elsa could not understand. Then, after all, she guessed that it was about a plush toy ermine. The boy explained that he slept with him, and when he woke up, he did not find it, no matter where he tried to look. The crew must have forgotten when they fell asleep, Elsa thought. Together they started looking in the boxes they had brought with them from the shops. They looked over everything in the building, decided to look outside. And then the baby dimly rushed to the fur coat for Elsa so that she would not freeze. Then he also carefully pulled the cap on her. Elsa hugged the boy and thanked him for his concern. When they met, it seemed to her that the brothers were not at all similar in character, but now he understands that they are similar in caring. Both are very smart and kind. The emotional girl cried, "Why doesn't Hugh speak? What can be done for him? First, you need to find a toy." The couple went out into the snowy yard. Hugh was not as wrapped up as Elsa, but he also wore headphones with fur. Completely forgetting about the boy's Nordic hardening, Elsa asked him not to go out so as not to catch a cold. As soon as she took a step in her summer shoes on the snow, she instantly slipped and fell. While she was apologizing for her clumsiness, Hugh was brushing the snow off her. Her nose was red because she buried it in the thickest snowdrift. But at that moment she noticed something similar to a small snowman. Maybe this is their disappearance? So it is. The toy ermine was covered with snow so it looked like a small snowman. Both sincerely rejoiced at the find. Hugh, as before, hugged his plush friend, from which the melting snow scraped. Elsa noticed that the toy, unfortunately, got wet, and Hugh rushed to the fireplace to dry her, and came too close. Elsa grabbed him and pulled him away from the fire. Too dangerous. The girl was worried that the boy was very upset. The toy could be permanently damaged. And then an idea occurred to her. She said a magic word, took her hand by the wrist, and sent heat to the toy with her open palm. He also has magic, even if it's just a little bit. However, this is what really surprised Hugh. She mistakenly made the ermine jump in the air. Hugh was very happy. Elsa, on the contrary, was upset that she did not manage to make any progress in her knowledge and skills. However, she managed to help. The child was happy again, and the toy was dry and warm. How charming is this plush ermine itself? Apparently, his facial expression reflected the feelings of Hugh himself. Elsa was very glad that she could help. She herself was warm from the realization that she was getting closer to the child. She is so weak in magical abilities that it is not even believed that she is from the ducal family. But on the other hand, she learned resourcefulness precisely because of this. The boy trustingly held her hand with his frozen fingers, so she took Hugh's reddened pen and used a tried-and-true method to warm her frozen fingers. Now it was clear that with Elsa, this child did not feel at all like a stranger and neglected. In order not to lose the toy, Elsa advised the boy to take it to the room for dinner. Hugh raised his hand to the mountain, as if trying to say something, and she asked what else he would like. He, like a fish, opened and closed his mouth, as if he was trying to express his thoughts with words out loud. And when Elsa sat down, he slapped her on the cheek. The kid laughed out loud. His guardian looked so funny due to surprise. Elsa grabbed her cheek. This little prince caused a surge of strong tenderness in her. The girl blushed all over. The cheek was especially burning. Elsa's hands clenched into fists. This is a forbidden technique. In fact, it was only the first kiss she had been kissed. Her heart was beating wildly. She clutched her chest. Noticing that her violent reaction startled the little one, the blonde gave him an embarrassed smile and told him that everything was fine, thanked him for his concern, and explained that her heart was simply overflowing with joy. Suddenly, the boy's laughter stopped. The kid instinctively hid behind his guardian. He looked startled at the door, which had opened. The blonde was also worried, but seeing the tears of the child and his efforts to explain that there must be a ghost, she said that everything is fine and ghosts do not exist. This comforted the boy a little. She looked kindly at the little one, and then she said that once upon a time she really wanted a friend with whom she could play together. Then Elsa thought that it might even be a ghost and tried to wait for him at night. It did nothing. The girl looked for instructions in sorcery books and tried to pronounce some orders, but the ghost did not appear. The Grand Duchess rested her hands confidently on her sides with a bold smile. "The boy seems to have calmed down a little," Elsa said. "That's why everything is fine," and went out into the corridor. Opening the door and looking out, she smiled and said that as you can see, no one is there. But the boy noticed someone unfamiliar in his house and was even more horrified. Elsa, seeing his reaction, asked what it was, but no one was there. But suddenly behind the blonde, as if from the ground, her angry, inadequate stepsister Karen appeared. Karen looked exactly like a drug addict after a breakup. Her eyes were creepy, and under them were such brown bags, as if they were stalks of potatoes for the winter. The boy became aggressive, and Elsa introduced her younger sister to him, explaining that she must have been worried and that's why she came to meet. After asking Karen to say hello to Mr. Hugh, Elsa was surprised that she was ominously silent and said that she did not advise such rude behavior in this house. Karen held out a finger to Elsa. Suddenly, a rose began to grow from her hand. Thorny branches crawled from the flower in all directions, aimed at Elsa. The blonde was surprised and looked scared at the sharp shoots that almost reached her head. The boy rushed to her. Karen snarled at Hugh to keep him away and continued shooting at her sister. Elsa asked what she was going to do. She had abused her before, but this was the first time. An angry Karen said that she needed money and demanded to cook immediately, without stopping her torture. Elsa asked why, and to this Karen snapped that the reason should not escape her. Maybe she completely forgot, but she is incompetent. And Karen made a crooked facepalm gesture. She accused Elsa of preventing the implementation of many people's plans, and now she has a chance to be at least a little useful. The boy was trembling with fright, Elsa angrily said that it is necessary to stop behaving like this in front of the child immediately. Karen smiled defiantly and said, "Why is she so worried about someone else's child?" Her face suddenly began to resemble a hyena that saw easy prey. "It's so funny to play a family here, although the real family has left her." Elsa didn't know what to say because it was the truth. Hugh had tears in his eyes, and Karen continued that yes, indeed, even her blood father left her. Elsa sullenly lowered her darkened face. The harpoons of thorny rose branches have already come very close to Elsa. Suddenly, Hugh began to speak. At first, he started shouting, "No." At the same time, Karen continued to explain that the Duke took Elsa as his wife only because he could not resist the Emperor, and there is no one in this world who would need her, and in general, she should be grateful. And suddenly, Hugh shouted at the top of his voice that no, it's not like that. He ran up and stood in front of Elsa, blocking her from the ominous thorny branches. He shouted that Elsa is his family. At the same time, he spread his hands, as if protecting a person dear to him. The emotional Archduchess, hardly believing her ears, burst into tears. "Mr. Hugh, he spoke," Karen remarked. "That's how. Since she is his family, so is Karen." And she started addressing the baby. Now she seems to be in a very difficult position. Will he not agree to help? Karen looked like a native of hell. The boy shook his head no way. He continued to hold out his arms like a small saving cross. When the insolent Karen asked why she is not a member of his family, the boy explained that she had offended his dear family. She is another family, and the little prince shouted with all his might that he hated her. Karen grimaced at this and said she hated him too, and pointed the branches at the little boy. Elsa protested, "Well, you can still understand the attack on her, but if Karen touches the son of the Grand Duke, she will not avoid big problems." Karen said that it is so, but against her is an unnecessary burden and a child who can't even speak normally. Somehow she will ride. Elsa thought that it was really His Majesty in the banquet hall with Wilbert. Even if you call for help, nothing will work, and Karen will not stand idly by. She would have the strength. Elsa took hold of his wrist. At the same time, Karen noticed her sister's plan and sinisterly assured her that efforts to resist were futile. Elsa had to protect Mr. Hugh. She said that everything would be fine and raked 3 shoots into her hand, blood dripping from her palm. "She won't let a finger touch Hugh," she said, breaking the branches. She was very happy when he came to her defense. The boy had pools of tears on his cheeks under his eyes. He held a toy ermine close to him. At the same time, Karen saw what was happening and said that, if so, she would be a little tougher. And she launched 3 times more shoots into a pair. Hugh shouted, "No!" And suddenly all the shoots were covered with ice. The whole palace was covered with ice. A large ice cage formed around Karen. Elsa's hands also froze from holding the frozen shoots. Karen looked like a frozen zombie and started screaming, "What a delusion." Her pupils narrowed in fear. "What happened?" shouted the Duke. Wilbert also could not understand where so much ice came from. The servant guessed that some kind of mysticism was happening again. Brave Hugh said he could explain. He held his ermine under his arm and was himself covered with pieces of ice and snow. An icicle flew out of his hand. It grew into 3, and from each of them figures similar to pawns were formed. One figure looked like him, the second looked like Elsa, and the third looked like Karen. "Look at this," said the boy. The boy unfolded with the help of ice sculptures the battle scene that had just taken place in the corridor. Rolf began to think that this magic, and Elsa continued, "It shows everything that happened before." Hugh said that this person started insulting him and Elsa. So is she bad? His toy was angry like a living thing. Karen cooed from her cage to tell him not to talk nonsense. With one gesture of his finger, Rolf froze the Duke's black-faced daughter's face. Elsa asked if her sister was sorry now. What is it like to be powerless in front of those stronger than her? Rolf added that if the uninvited guest made noise, the next one would be a frozen nose. Finally, the guards escorted the brat out of the palace. The Grand Duke looked troubled. It seems he was beginning to understand why his wife had not received her proper status of upbringing and other benefits. Rolf praised the brave kid, who looked at him with a somewhat surprised look. He did exactly what he had to do, and Elsa approached brave Hugh and bowed down to thank him for saving her. Suddenly, she hugged the golden-haired boy tightly and burst into tears. She is so glad that everything ended well. Wilbert jealously pushed Elsa away from his brother, saying that you shouldn't approach him with such a look, which made the servants laugh. Then he approached his brother and told him that he was cool. He was able to speak and protected Elsa. He is proud of him. Hugh blushed and thanked him. He also had wet eyes. Wilbert's eyes were the blue color of permafrost from birth, but they still shone with warmth towards his brother. He was really proud of the closest person on this planet. Elsa added, "Thank God." She had already calmed down and kindly watched the conversation. This is how normal siblings should be. Then one of the maids burst into tears and began to thank Elsa. Elsa was surprised. The nanny explained that while she was cleaning, she couldn't find Mr. Hugh anywhere, and when she found it, the following happened. The maid assured that everything worked out thanks to them, and His Majesty is probably glad that the danger is over. But from the appearance of His Majesty, it was hardly possible to say so. He stood focused and even angry. His icy eyes shone even brighter on his darkened face. The Archduchess said that it seems to her that everything is quite the opposite. Suddenly, the Grand Duke stepped towards his wife. Then he bowed before her, saying that he was indescribably grateful to her. She almost fell from surprise. She protested why he behaved like that, but she did nothing. Moreover, she made the man experience such fear. He noted that she too had experienced a lot of excitement, but despite this fear, she protected his child. I carefully took her injured hand, pointed 2 fingers to her palm, and said that for the first time in a very long time, thanks to her, I heard Hugh's voice. Very good voice. Energy came from Rolf's fingers, which healed the wounds on Elsa's hand. Only the good gloves were hopelessly damaged. Elsa was surprised that Rolf did not notice Hugh's magical abilities in the first place, but rather said that his experiences related to the baby's voice. At the same time, Wilbert could not talk to his brother. She looked at her flawless husband and thought that he was a wonderful father for these boys. Why did he have such an expression on his face? The girl was worried, pressing her already healthy hands to her chest. All of a sudden, a kind of grumbling was heard throughout the hall. Hugh explained that he was hungry. Rolf added that really, they hadn't even had dinner yet and they should hurry. Although Mr. Hugh was ashamed, he ate more than usual. And until now, he probably just couldn't express his wishes correctly. Now his growth will accelerate. Elsa quietly laughed comfortingly. And Karen is no longer here. You will be able to spend your time peacefully. Wilbert, peering out of the window, turned to Lady Elsa. The girl asked not to address her so officially. He agreed, and putting his hand to his chest, said that there was a conversation about Hugh. Elsa squatted across from Wilbert and asked what had happened. The boy explained that Hugh couldn't sleep, but when the 4 of them slept, everything was fine. Maybe he could fall asleep now if they all slept together. He asks the girl to help them. Elsa, of course, agreed and hugged the boy to her, thanked him for his trust. The girl went to the smaller boy's room and gently knocked, asking if he was sleeping and if it was okay to come in. He got up from the bed and went to Elsa. He looked at her with big emerald eyes, an adoring look. Elsa sat down and asked if she could sleep with him today. The boy asked in surprise why this was necessary. Elsa thought that she must have misunderstood something. At a loss as to what to say to him, she could think of no better excuse than to say that she could not sleep without him. The boy's eyes were square with surprise. Elsa added that besides, Mr. Wilbert couldn't sleep without him either, and opened the door. Wilbert, who had been standing outside the door and eavesdropping, literally burst into the room without expecting the door to open. Hugh asked why that was. Wilbert hesitated to answer and said that this happened sometimes. "Well, the 3 of them will sleep tonight," Elsa said, holding out her arms for a hug. Wilbert was a little upset. At least he obviously took this venture very seriously. And Hugh was very happy. He was beaming with pleasure and tightly holding his favorite toy with both hands. Okay, she managed to pull it off. But now how to find out what exactly prevented the boy from falling asleep? She hadn't even thought about it before. Glancing at the baby, she saw that he was looking at her and not sleeping. The boy smiled and then turned to his brother. Elsa couldn't stand it and hugged him, squealing that she couldn't understand why he was so cute. She asked Mr. Wilbert if he was always so nice. The older brother clearly did not expect such a question and asked what she meant. This is so clear. Because Hugh has been the cutest little brother ever since he was born. And Wilbert jumped out of bed and ran to get the family album. Here is a photo of him crawling for the first time. How cute! Elsa clapped her hands. Here he left. The boy kept flipping through the family album. But no matter how much Hugh cried, when his father took him in his arms, he always calmed down and fell asleep. At these words, tears dripped from Hugh's eyes, falling onto his plush toy. He shrank all over as if from the cold. Elsa noticed that the child was crying and began to calm the boy. She and Wilbert called out to Hugh at the same time because they were both frightened. He cried, saying, I'm sorry, and then he said that because of him, my mother died, and so did my father. Again, sorry. Wilbert seriously asked if Hugh always blamed himself. He said it was because he was born, because he was capricious. Wilbert asked who told him that. Not hearing an answer, the elder brother continued to inquire excitedly. Who gave him such an idea? Little Hugh continued to shed bitter, disconsolate tears. No, it's all his fault. Anne should have apologized earlier. It was scary, I couldn't speak. He remembered the creepy king from his nightmares. Elsa gently asked Hugh if he was afraid that he would be scolded. Her quiet tone seemed to calm him down a little. The boy shook his head in denial in the usual way, but no, he is not afraid that he will be scolded. He will simply be hated. The blondes looked at the child sympathetically. Is it the fear of being rejected? Don't worry about it, said Wilbert, because he is not guilty of anything. It's just that my mother was in poor health. No one is to blame for this. Tears also appeared in the eyes of the elder brother, but my mother was always waiting to meet him. The black boy remembered his mother, who was sitting in a chair, pregnant and holding the same favorite stuffed toy as his brother. The older brother explained that it was mother who had sewn this toy. He also does not fully understand everything, and even so, he will not forgive anyone who dares to offend him. Hugh said, Brother, can he excuse himself in that case with him? His eyes were still full of tears. Elsa and Wilbert looked at the little boy with sympathy, and the little brother rushed to hug the baby. Yes, of course he can. He is his brother and he loves him. Malika smiled comfortingly. The last tear ran down his cheek. He hugged his brother even tighter. They had a good cry on each other's shoulders. Elsa was very happy about this situation. The next morning, they all gathered at the table to have breakfast. They sat down in a row, and when the Archduke approached, they all respectfully greeted him, wishing him good morning. At the same time, the brothers held hands. Wilbert said seriously that he and Hugh had a conversation for him. The younger one added that he was asking to listen to him. Rolf looked at the boys very seriously and intently. It seems that he treats everything in the world extremely responsibly. He asked what happened. Hugh spoke first. Tears dripped profusely from his eyes. He spoke words of apology about his father not coming back because of him. The Grand Duke's face showed extreme surprise. He opened his mouth. I asked why the kid thought so. A long time ago, when his father and the Duke were called to the castle, he burst into tears, and because of him, his father and even his brother. The boy could not finish the thought because suddenly a ghost in a crown appeared in the dining room, the ghost of the Emperor, as Elsa guessed. Is that Hugh's magic? Everyone thought, but the ghost shouted to shut up, and he said that it was because of Hugh that his father did not return. And if he tries to say something extra, then the next time he won't be a brother either. Hugh said it was all his fault and covered his mouth with his hands. The kid was afraid to say something that the ghost of the Emperor did not want to hear. The Grand Duke said that was not true at all, and the ghost laughed. The Grand Duke concluded that Hugh had been suffering all this time. I apologize for not noticing this. He wiped the tears from the baby's face with his finger. He said that there was no need to blame himself. Wilbert, to support his brother, took him by the hand. After making a couple of manipulations with his fingers, the Archduke destroyed the ghost and said that there are no ghosts. Wilbert thought how cool his Duke was. Someday he will become the same, achieve the same skill. Rolf seemed to grab the ghost in his fist. But if Elsa sets herself such a goal, it will be very difficult for her, Wilbert said. She asked why. Ghosts do not exist? Rolf looked at her seriously and turned everyone's attention to the window. There was an aurora. In a few minutes, the whole family ran out into the yard to admire its beauty. Elsa saw this for the first time and wondered if it was not magic. Hugh was jumping up and down in joy. Rolf explained that this is a natural phenomenon that is a miracle of God, and now it is best seen. Proof that God has not forgotten them. It's a blessing, Wilbert added. The girl dreamily repeated, a blessing, and she said that this was probably praise for the fact that they had reconciled. Rolf asked again, how did you reconcile? She explained that the misunderstanding disappeared, the connection became stronger, that is, they reconciled. Elsa continued to express her delight at how beautiful it all was, Everything seemed lilac and blue, but she stepped out into the snow again with her shoes on, so she slipped while looking up. The boys rushed to help, but did not have time. Rolf was the first to pick up his wife and explain that it was quite dangerous to do so. She blushed and thanked. The man involuntarily fell in love with her, so trusting and gentle. And he continued to think about what else she had just said. So, the misunderstanding. He was supposed to meet with her on New Year's, but the duration of the task kept getting longer. It was as if everything was arranged in such a way that they would not meet. Wilbert also confirmed that no information was received by the castle either. For them, her appearance was a complete surprise. The Duke in reality and the Duke, according to rumors, are two completely different people, and the Emperor's behavior is kind of strange, atypical. Elsha reasoned that something was wrong here. She said with a cute smile that she was happy that their misunderstanding had melted away like last year's snow. Rolf said it was for sure, and Elsha thought, it is worth learning more about the reason for the Duke's marriage, and about everyone else as well. And so she offered to continue this conversation in the evening. Rolf asked why. Elsha explained, because soon Hugh's stomach will growl in the house. The children and the girl laughed. When Elsha playfully began to push Rolf, he smiled for the first time in her memory, and agreed with her. He was now 1,000 times cuter than usual. Elsha laughed loudly and thought that now she would like to spend as much time as possible with them because they are trying to become a family. A month and a half after Elsha appeared here, and 2 weeks after the Duke's return, she was officially recognized as a duchess. She slowly got used to her new life. She told Zerk that she was relying on her. This is the chief housekeeper of the palace. She must be a support to the duchess, and now it is under her leadership. Observing Zerk's arrangements and noting everything she saw, Elsha understood that she could really be relied on. Looking over her notes, the girl reasoned that one day everything would start to work out for her. Nothing will change if she just whines, must try harder. Then she was distracted by a boy. He had just come from the street and touched his cheek with a cold palm. Seeing her funny reaction, he laughed heartily. The nanny ran in, rehearsing for Hugh to wait a little. Elsie explained that they had just returned from a walk, as if it wasn't obvious. Elsha, knowing the child's schedule, guessed that she was busy with business. I went to tea with goodies. The kid clapped his hands to warm them. She promised to make tea with honey, because her throat is not very good today. We need to make sure that he talks a little less. The nanny suggested taking something stronger. Maybe summer leaves, suggested Elsha. After adding a generous amount of honey to the tea, the Archduchess served it to a happy Hugh, making his heart sing. For her, tea has become a daily pastime. For Hugh, it's dialogue training. Suddenly, Mr. Wilbert entered the room, apologizing for being late and waiting. For him, as a person who works too conscientiously, this is a forced rest. As he sipped the delicious hot tea with inspiration, Wilbert asked how the preparations were going. Elsha was surprised. What other preparation? Their nannies whispered behind the boys' backs. The boys exclaimed in unison that this was preparation for the festival in honor of His Majesty's birthday. This was a surprise for the Duke's wife. She said she hadn't even heard of it. Having once appeared before his lordship and found him in his office at work, Elsha began to question why she had not been warned. He looked at her questioningly over his glasses. She said it was about the festival. He was going to call her for advice. She apologized for jumping to conclusions. She thought that she would not be involved in the holiday. There is nothing to worry about. He would definitely warn according to Rule #1. Recognize Elsha as his wife and always try to consult. Thank you for the reminder. This is a holiday for the aristocracy, not by his will. He does not like such measures. This is her first outing, so don't relax. I was excited. If this is an opening event, then magic too? He confirmed. She will have to demonstrate it. She knew so. Elsha must fulfill her duties as a wife, and the children will be with her. This party is a little like an exam. Rule #3. In order to check how the parenting is going, Rolf has the right to make such checks. And if the participants do not pass them, Elsha swallowed nervously, they will be deprived of parental rights. But it should not be taken so closely. No matter what, she will pass everything successfully, she promises. He smiled. Well, he'll hope so. If you have any questions, please contact us. Necessarily. There is a month left until the festival. In order to do everything in time, you need to make a schedule. Elsha is magic. Hugh has words. As His Majesty says, they mustn't overexert themselves. Elsa turned to Mr. Wilbert. Why does he pretend that he is not here for anything? He also has a task, and a very important, difficult thing. She raised her index finger up in a mentoring manner. He asked with a smile, and what is it? Why exaggerate so much? Let them say already, there is no need to languish like that. And Elsa handed him a piece of paper with a written task. This will be a task about food. Write down what he likes and what he doesn't like. It seems that she has a talent for finding difficulties. This black boy's face darkened as well. He looked puzzled and outraged at the same time, especially compared to the white porcelain cup. Elsa was waiting at the table with concentration. The chef somewhat resembled a formidable Mayan before a battle, only very large. The Archduchess gathered everyone who had anything to do with the kitchen. She said they were starting a meeting on how to remove Mr. Wilbert's dislike of certain foods. On the table was a carrot cake, which he just loved. Elsa, looking tired of life, invited the general director to speak, who has something to say on this matter. The housekeeper raised her hand and said that she had nothing to say about it, so she asked her to leave the meeting. Toman laughed, and Elsa let her go. Then she gave the word to the chef first. Elsa wanted to hear from him about Mr. Wilbert's favorite foods. He explained that in order to improve health, it is necessary to maintain a balance of meat and vegetables. His subordinate held out a scroll and said with a smile that it contained the current menu. Wilbert's nanny analyzed that he left almost everything on the menu untouched. Wilbert was surprised by such an analyst. They explained that this is their job. Hugh applauded. Elsa was glad that he at least ate salmon. The boy confirmed that he eats fish. The nanny said that he eats fresh fish, but not canned fish. He said that he should not spoil his image. At the same time, Elsa notes everything. Nanny Hugh was happy. Her child ate everything. The Grand Duchess praised the little boy. Wilbert was uncomfortable with this. The chef said they try to make the menu as good as possible, but they have some limitations. How to be? Behind Elsa, as if out of nowhere, her husband appeared and whispered in her ear that she could not worry about this. Her heart was agitated, beating frantically. Rolf explained that he also did not like vegetables before and hardly touched them. Understands that all employees are trying their best. Don't panic. Elsa told Wilbert that she agreed. It is necessary to start with small steps. But suddenly she noticed that Wilbert was very sad and asked what happened. And Wilbert asked the Archduke how he learned to eat vegetables. Rolf explained that 11 years ago he met a girl who ate them very appetizingly, with great pleasure. It was Clara, Wilbert's mother. It seemed to him that what she was eating was something special. And when he noticed that he also started eating vegetables, he got used to them himself. But this story is unlikely to be needed by Wilbert. Is it His Majesty? Ah, that's how. Something is wrong. He also eats appetizingly. Yes, he also ate everything this morning. But the truth is the truth. Everything here is really delicious. Elsa raised the thumbs of both hands up. Wilbert still sat sullenly. He told Gita to bring vegetables. The nanny was blown away by the wind. She immediately rushed to carry out the order. Nurse Hugh and butler Toman laughed. Wilbert was told not to force himself. The guide placed a small cut of vegetables, cheese, and casserole in front of the boy. Wilbert immediately handed the tray to Elsa and told her to taste, and faster. Elsa took one piece of casserole, put cheese and a circle of pickled cucumber on top, and she chewed with appetite to the thunderous applause of all present. Strengthening himself, Wilbert took a piece of pickle and sent it to his mouth. He gave him a hasty drink of water and said that of course he could if he wanted to, because he was the future Archduke. Elsa and Rolf praised the boy. In response, he promised to try. In the future, he asks to give pickling, but to mix it with something. The team of chefs unanimously said yes for sure. The cook asked what to give the Grand Duke to drink. Rolf said that he should serve the grog. That's how, Elsa remarked. He always drinks either grog or coffee with cheese. And the cook spoke to her, in a whisper. As for his dislike of vegetables, Mr. Bert's taste was the same. Elsa sagged anxiously. I wondered what it could mean. Why did Rolf talk about himself as if he was Mr. Berta? On the dressing table next to the girl's bed stood a large stack of books. She never turned off the nightlight because she could not sleep for a long time due to disturbing thoughts. Mr. Berta did not like vegetables. If she is not mistaken, this person was the previous duke and the older brother of the current duke. And why did he talk about his brother as about himself? Still, he won't be able to ask about it. But the blonde was most worried about this recent incident with Mr. Hugh and the ghost that was gagging him. It was a lovely picture when Elsa was sitting on the bed the next morning on her knees across from Rolf. He also sat and listened to her attentively. The Archduchess was giving the first day's report. When she finished reporting for the week, she raised her hand and wanted to ask a question about the Emperor. Told her she was right. It would take too long to explain, so he prepared this for her and pointed to a huge stack of books. To find out the relationship between the Emperor and the Duke, you need to look into history. And even in fairy tales, she read all day and evening, but there was no progress. To familiarize yourself with everything, it will take a whole 6 months. Besides the festival, there are other matters to attend to. And the problem of food in winter, inflation of magic, international relations, a gift to the Emperor. It is necessary to cover everything. That's not good for anywhere. Elsa burst out, falling asleep under the book. We should act more effectively. The next morning, she gathered the children and announced to Rolf that she was asking to join them for a walk around town. Wilbert was intrigued by what she had come up with this time, and Hugh, as always, was immensely happy to have any communication with Elsa. The older boy asked what the matter was, and Elsa explained that it is necessary to study the local culture. She would like to listen to their memories, check what's going on with inflation, and look for something that could be used at the festival, and continued to read the list. Wilbert said she was too active, and shared with her the experience that with such intensity, she will not remember anything. Better let him do it all without haste. Hugh called Elsa and pointed to a snow-covered tree. And indeed, there are so many similar trees in the city. Wilbert said that this is Snowbell. She asked if it was the name of the city. He said yes. In summer, the whole city is covered in these white flowers. Hence the name. Elsa said she can't wait for summer. Then she greeted the girl with the baby in her arms. The Archduke explained to the woman that she was his wife, the Archduchess. The young mother asked if she had come from the Empire. Her yellow eyes were surprised. Then she got on her knees and said that she was asking for forgiveness. Elsa asked her to get up immediately. Elsa was confused. The woman explained that she could not do otherwise, and her child burst into tears. The people began to converge and bow before her in obeisance. Wilbert concluded that it was impossible for aristocrats to learn culture in the city. They are not like ordinary people. Suddenly, the children started playing snowballs. Wilbert and Hugh were sad, and Elsa thought that they, too, probably wanted to play. Well, she will have to intervene. She screamed, and can she too? Because she has never played before. Wilbert was terribly surprised. The children were also scared. Who is it? This is an aristocrat. She clumsily threw an unformed snowball at the children. On, get it! The children were scared at first, and then they started teasing her that she couldn't throw snowballs. Hugh said Elsa was cool. Wilbert confirmed that he did. She treats everyone the same. The next snowball flew at Wilbert. He was wondering why his heart was pounding so hard. The boy was kissed on the head. He screamed that it hurt. He was offered to play together, but he wanted to say that he does not play such games. In short, the boys took him for granted. Wilbert was angry at the red-haired boy's words that he was small and could not cope. The red-haired boy gestured that it was so, wasn't it? Hugh looked eagerly at his angry brother. The Grand Duke approached and asked what was wrong with his child. Behind him stood a very formidable, scarred bodyguard. The kids covered themselves in a cold sweat. Rudenki, feeling that there was someone in front of him, was frightened and asked who he was. The guard replied that in front of them was His Highness the Grand Duke, the man who rules Isbel. The Duke looked at the boy without anger. The children bowed and apologized for their rudeness, but the ruddy boy stubbornly did not want to bow his head. Rolf asked what happened here. Elsa, to smooth things over, cheerfully replied that she had asked to be taught how to play the local games. Rolf was surprised at her behavior, and she explained that she just wanted to get to know the cultural features of the area better, and thought that the boys wouldn't mind either. And she winked at Wilbert. At first the boy was confused, but after regaining his composure, he gave in to Elsa. Indeed, this is how they will develop their physical culture. Elsa thought that she seemed to have passed away. He is like... Of course, the Archduke understood the seriousness of the situation, but when the girl offered him to join, he gasped in surprise, and the guard's jaw dropped. With a calm expression on her face, Elsa said, "She thinks the children will be happy." The children of the common people rolled with laughter. Wilbert and even Hugh did not expect this from her, but played along with her. Elsa had a plan. Such games should strengthen Rolf's relationship with the children. To change the subject, she asked why the Archduke and the bodyguard had come to them. Rolf explained that they had gone around town and now he could spend some time with them. The guard remarked that there was not much time left. Another person from the Duke's entourage approached him. "So it's really fun to play." Wilbert smugly sighed with relief. Hugh was genuinely happy. The local boys were shocked. In half an hour, entire snow fortification structures grew in the yard. The players were divided into teams. The people rushed to the spectacle. Archduke and Wilbert joined the team of wolves, which consisted of non-aristocrats. Another postal representative announced the rules. Capturing the opponent's flag gives victory. The game is timed, so if no one's flag is captured, the team with the most surviving players wins. The one who is hit by a snowball is eliminated. Magic and weapons are prohibited. Also, His Majesty and Sir Gustav cannot use the working hand. Therefore, their right hands were tied to their belts. But the children still could not dare to kiss the Duke. Rolf said with a focused look that there was no point in holding back. He was uncomfortable sculpting snowballs with one hand. The red-haired boy stated ambitiously that it wouldn't hurt the Duke to try to hold back. Everyone was shocked. An active firefight began. Rudenki praised Wilbert's opponent for his skill. The black boy answered in all seriousness that, "Of course he is the next Archduke," and shouted not to use Hugh as a shield. The redhead just laughed. Elsa thanked God that the children became friends, and she sculpted snowmen in bulk batches. Suddenly, Gustav was knocked out by Rolf. Will he kiss her too? Undoubtedly, he is obsessed with fighting. For some reason, the blonde raked everything she had stuck into a pile and rushed towards the Archduke like an armored train, perhaps hoping to kiss up close. But as usual, she slipped and fell on him. Of course, he couldn't catch her in this peak with one hand, not children's games in front of all subordinate people. She blushed like cancer. The referee attracted even more attention by blowing his whistle and asking His Majesty to leave the arena. Rules are rules. The blonde noticed that the man was worried about his damaged hair. Suddenly, they looked back at a child's cry. The ice had collapsed under one of the children, and he was quickly falling under the ice without holding on to anything. From the screams of the boys of the Wolves team, they learned that the victim's name was Vigo. The Archduke and Hugh rushed to help. Together, they created a giant kind ermine that pulled Vigo out of the water. By some miracle, Wilbert and Elsa immediately put on their skates and went to the victim. The girl began to warm Vigo's hands in the only way she knew how to use magical skills. The boy came to his senses and thanked him. Opening his eyes, Vigo saw that he was being treated by the Duchess herself, said he wasn't worth the cost of her magic. Elsa looked back at her husband. "It's natural, isn't it?" He approved of her action. Indeed, they should protect the city and its inhabitants. The family looked like a poster for a Christmas melodrama and felt like all the guardians of the galaxy. The red-haired boy was rushing with a crowd of alarmed relatives, among whom was his uncle with a narrow slit in his eyes. This, as it became clear, was Vigo's father. Vigo was still sitting in the chair, in the arms of the bewitched ermine, and Elsa was still warming the boy with magic. But he immediately recognized both Cousin Chris and Dad. The children were very surprised when they touched the victim and could not believe that he did not get wet. Elsa laughed comfortedly. "I passed the exam externally." At her words that she should show him to the doctor, the tearful father took her hands and began to thank her for saving him. People tried to warn him that this is His Majesty's wife, but Adam, Vigo's father, was in the grip of emotions. The girl smiled sweetly, answered the handshake, and asked to be called just Elsa. Then she began to introduce her whole family by name, first Wilbert, then Hugh. When she reached the Grand Duke, she noticed he was still trying to lick his hair and playfully adjusted it with magic, causing him to blush. Finally, she introduced Grand Duke Rolf and complimented him that he didn't look shaggy either. He composed himself and expressed his joy that everything ended well. Vigo family was also happy. Red-haired Chris seems to have changed his attitude towards the Grand Duke and towards the aristocracy in general. Adam rushed to hug his son. The people lively discussed the news, which everyone witnessed. Even the snowy ermine smiled sweetly. Suddenly, Elsa sneezed loudly until her braids stood on end, and a cute woman in a scarf called everyone to warm themselves by the fire nearby. Watching Elsha getting to know Vigo better and comforting him, Wilbert again felt something unusual in his heart. Wilbert tried to sort out his feelings. Vigo was saved. Everyone rejoices. Why does he only feel dislike? Suddenly, a gust of wind tore off Wilbert's scarf, which immediately fell on the cat, which did not know where it came from. But it also happened that the cat got confused in it and ran blindly to where the paws led. The boy rushed after him, but there was nowhere to catch up with him. The alarmed animal meowed and thrashed about. It was swept into the nearest street, finally caught. But the scarf was hopelessly torn. "Tell anyone, they won't believe you." Wilbert realized that he was lost in an unfamiliar area. He convinced himself to be strong because he was to become the next archduke after his father. He remembered that he had done nothing and was saddened. He saw a fallen leaf in front of him and looked up at the snowball. On the tree hung a sign, in which was written the gratitude of Amelia for the fact that she was born. Wilbert mentioned that these trees are always planted in honor of the celebration of some event. As proof that someone needs a person, it turns out that it is not Elsha who is redundant, but the opposite. The boy cried. He felt that no one needed him. What is the use of it? He was holding a wooden tablet in his hands. The wind was ruffling his braids. Then suddenly he found himself in a strong embrace and smelled a familiar smell mixed with the aroma of a campfire. "Elsha," she cried uncontrollably and thanked God, holding the boy in her arms. She recognized him from the back. It seems that the cat was not simple. He was carrying a fallen leaf in his teeth, which caused Wilbert to linger here, and a happy red-haired Chris was running after him. Elsha could not contain her emotions. What if something happened to her boy? She roared like a beluga. Wilbert quietly told her to calm down. The Archduke came up. His face also showed anxiety. He spoke to his wife in a calm tone, trying to calm her down. Rolf assumed that Wilbert had picked up on her feelings. There is nothing to worry about. And he put his hand on her shoulder. Wilbert apologized to His Majesty for the inconvenience caused. Rolf said that there was no inconvenience, but they were worried, and asks to be informed if something is wrong with him. Wilbert briefly revealed that he himself does not know, but he wants to plant a snowball at this festival. In response, Rolf put his hand on the little one's shoulder and with warmth in his voice offered to celebrate family holidays from now on. Elsha smiled. Such changes in the family were not without her merit. Now the boy also beamed with a happy smile. It seems that he liked this idea of the Grand Duke. He agreed. Hugh, pointing to his family, rushed to meet, surrounded by Gustav and the entire Vigo family, together with the culprit of the main events. Having reached his brother, Hugh swept him off his feet. All the people rejoiced, especially Vigo. Adam and the baker laughed heartily, and probably the cat was amused, judging by its cheeky red face. The next morning, Elsha analyzed the events of yesterday. A lot had happened, but she had a great opportunity to listen to the stories of ordinary people. What does the tree of snowdrops mean in their day and in general about their everyday life? The girl wrote down the most important thing, but she didn't notice, which made Mr. Wilbert worry. Of course, she tried to be a mother, but it seems that this is not enough, so there is no way for her to become the real wife of the Grand Duke. Her heart was filled with sadness and anxiety. Suddenly, the blonde burst into Zerka. The housekeeper did not expect such a storm of emotions from the hostess, but she reacted restrainedly. The girl demanded from Zerka to make her his student in order to pass on all the knowledge of farming. According to the Archduchess, all the service personnel of the palace properly performed their duties, making a conscientious effort. But the housekeeper is the most cold-blooded of all. Here and now she simply discreetly inquired what exactly Elsha invests in the concepts of her student. Elsha reasoned that it was she who would be able to professionally and objectively evaluate her efforts. The complete opposite of Elsha, who did not feel it and expressed out loud her assumptions and dreams that when Zerka praises her, she can confidently feel like a real archduchess. Zerk herself took into account that Elsha had won the hearts of children and servants, appreciated her work, but she could not trust her because the girl was sent by the emperor. Bilyavka asked to train her well and promised to ask the Archduke for an allowance for increased workload. The woman explained that it is not necessary to ask His Majesty every time because everything around the house, including wages, is regulated by the Grand Duchess, and the servants are her hands and feet. When Elsha asked if this meant consent to teach her, Zerka advised her to think about what to call her. Bilyavka joyfully thanked and added the word teacher at the end of the phrase as her chosen form of address. Zerk thought that even if this girl sincerely cares about children, she is not suitable for the role of Archduchess because of her immaturity and cannot protect this house and family. But since this is a good opportunity to find out what she is capable of, so be it. And she took me on a tour of the cold storage rooms because the manager's job includes provision of provisions. Noticing that Elsha thinks only about heat, Zerka said that in order to work efficiently, she advises to be more attentive. The girl asked what the problem was. The housekeeper replied that thanks to magic, His Majesty could store food. But ordinary people cannot do that. Precisely because of the harsh winter weather conditions in Eisbel, they also store products here for critical cases for the city. This became news to Elsha, and she made a note in her notebook. The previous administrator was incognito to investigate the state of affairs in the city. So the girl, seeing these actions as a desire to help, asked why it is not possible to organize such a warehouse in the city. The housekeeper explained that the Archduke's position is currently unstable, and it is not desirable for him to show arbitrariness regarding the Emperor's policy and use high-level magic. So, in order to have state weight and recognition, the Archduke cannot use high-level magic for ordinary residents, Elsha concluded. Zerk noted that the protection of the Archduke's house is the protection of the territory of the entire Eisbel, and added that she heard Elsha is currently studying history, so let her check the details there. Zerk thought to herself that it could not be that the family would not notice how deeply the lady was thinking. Looking at the fish, Elsha asked if it would be possible to prepare canned food. She does not know how to use magic, so she will do everything in a simple way. The blonde did not postpone this idea and from the very next day began to experiment. Wilbert did not like dried fish. The next day, I started fermentation. It turned out something like surströmming, and no one even tried it. On the third day, the mackerel was smoked. The process is unpleasant, but not everyone was satisfied with the result. Wilbert, as usual, gave a low rating. But the preparation of semi-finished products in breadcrumbs with sauce and fried potatoes in the peasant style was liked by everyone without exception. Even Zerky praised it. Elsha was happy. It would usually take months to make a workpiece of this scale, but she got it in a couple of days. And magic is simple, she can easily handle it, which means that common people can do it too. So, in her opinion, nothing will happen to the Duke's position. The housekeeper agreed with this assumption. Well, then she wants to experiment more to test the reproducibility of the process. Zerk knocked on the Archduke's office. He was working on current affairs with Toman, called to enter. Meanwhile, Elsha was drinking tea. She was disturbed by disturbing thoughts. This is the day of the report. Today she and her husband will again sleep together, but as strangers. What will Zerka tell him? Will Elsha be kicked out? But the husband came faster than she had time to finish the tea. She was very excited by this, but he asked her to pour him too and sat down to listen to the report, and when she finished, he simply thanked her. Elsha expected something more. She explained that Zerka also reported today. Was there anything about the Archduchess in her report? Zerk, although she mentioned that there are shortcomings, reported that Elsha has all the qualities to effectively manage this large house, and she gets along well with the people on the territory. It doesn't look like she's a spy. Elshi Rolf said that according to the housekeeper's report, the Archduchess was diligent in her efforts to improve her management skills, even though she had shortcomings. Looking kindly at the blonde, he added that he considered her young and that he, like his brother, should use magic for the duchy. Elsha could not understand which brother it was about. It seems that this surprised her even more than the generous praise. Rolf apologized. Really, she doesn't know him. His face showed sadness. A murderer can't react like that when he remembers his brother, and all the rumors about him are slander. She beamed and explained that she just really wanted to know as much as possible about the Grand Duke himself. All that Rolf can use is only magic for beauty and for battle. Nothing that could be applied to benefit people. Therefore, she took his hand and offered to try together. For example, you can prepare a special treat for festival guests. Doesn't he want to try? The girl explained that in front of them were sweets from the territory of Lusval. Frappe and glace shanti, that is, coffee with ice cream. A short-lived, but impressive dessert. He said that the idea is not bad, but the relatives who are against him, whom he could not even invite to the wedding, will look at it as prejudiced and meticulous as possible. Elsa thanked Rolf for his concern and promised to come up with something to make the best impression possible. The blonde surprised him by offering to invite the children to their tea party, as Rolf had prepared these goodies. He explained that his ability to make such gifts to children with the help of magic is her merit, so she deserves an award. What is the reward? They are a couple. Elsa was still unusual for such actions that serve in good families to strengthen. Rolf said that his brother always gave his wife gifts as a thank you, and father did the same. Elsa was moved. That's what a wonderful and sweet family he has. He said that it must be so, although he did not take it seriously. Rolf asked what she would like to receive as a reward. It was unusual for her, because the only reward she remembered was when Nanny Masha took her in her arms. She won't ask for that, but he took this idea seriously. He seriously mumbled her childhood dream, then came close and wrapped his arms around her. Elsa was suddenly unable to say the question that was on her tongue. What does it mean? Rolf asked if he had made a mistake at the time and lowered her onto the couch. Then he took her in his arms in a different way, picking her up under her feet, and asked her if it was better now. Elsa was convinced he would try to take her in his arms as many times as necessary to satisfy her. She nervously rehearsed that everything was fine. He was satisfied and gave a playful look. And this is a reward from the Grand Duke? Will he continue to do so? And this after he said not to get any hopes up. Why is he playing with her emotions like that now? Did he recognize her? She is not yet ready for a relationship between a man and a woman. However, he noticed that it was already time to sleep and offered to invest. He was short of breath in an instant, and Elsa could not close her eyes for a long time from excitement. From the very morning, the Grand Duke jumped to his feet from a knock on the door. Toman and Zerk came to inform about the urgent situation. As it turned out, there was information that Rolf's parents had arrived in the village of Lumi, which means that they would be at the farm after dinner. This is earlier than expected. In addition, an order was given to eliminate a bandit group near the village of Roska. Rolf approved this decision. We must hurry before the festival begins. Elsa began to build her family. It is necessary to immediately prepare for the meeting of the Grand Duke's parents. Item number 2 for the day was to prepare the Duke and his bodyguards to work to eliminate the gang as ordered by the Emperor. The third is to meet the parents with all due honors. Probably everything. Rolf noted, it's not the first day he copes with his work, so Elsa can cross this item off her list of tasks. Rolf turned to Toman and Zerk and instructed them to give Elsa a list of his parents' likes and dislikes. Wilbert also added that his grandmother likes cod. The Archduke upset Elsa. He warned against fast food dishes due to contraindications for his mother's health. She even has to live in the southern region because she does not tolerate the local climate. Elsa wondered why her husband takes so much equipment and adds unfamiliar items from the range of camping equipment. Where is he planning to spend the night? He explained that he could not use magic and was going on a campaign on his own and would spend the night in the field. Because if he goes through the city, he will not be able to remain unnoticed. When he said that since he works for the good of the people, he should not interfere in his private life, Elshea was overcome with shock. How can such a kind and self-sacrificing person be called a cruel murderer? She still doesn't know much, but the attitude towards him is extremely unfair. Elsa was shaking with righteous anger. The girl said that all this time she had watched the Archduke protect Isbel's people, but she had been rude to him. So he apologizes. He can rely on her and entrust his parents to her team. Having made sure that the kitchen affairs were in order, Elsa looked at her notebook. Hugh had an important request that he whispered in her ear. Soon a carriage arrived at the palace square. Family and relatives lined up in front of the grand entrance to greet the arrivals with honor. The purple carriage was drawn by a pair of bay horses. The beautiful couple who got out of the carriage could not be called infirm grandparents, especially Rolf's mother. Instead of congratulatory words in response to Rolf's welcome back, the father expressed displeasure with his son's outfit. The Archduke explained that he was going on an urgent mission for the Emperor. Now it's Elsa's turn to say hello and get to know each other. She made a knick-knack according to international etiquette rules and introduced herself. The boys also greeted each other according to the rules of etiquette. Afterwards, Hugh handed the grandparents a card he had made himself. It contained an invitation to a celebration in honor of the meeting. The lady read carefully. Wilbert and Hugh watched her reaction with interest. The emotional woman hugged the babies and thanked them for such a sweet gift. Grandfather also looked at the boys with tenderness. Elsa said with a smile that it was Mr. Hugh's idea. They decided to organize a small celebration. The kid drew the invitation himself. The Archduchess said that they had made a gift for Rolf as well, a talisman of the sun. They put their heart into it. The blonde assured everyone that they had prepared a lot of delicious things, and I would like to briefly discuss something with my husband, but the children protested that it was cold. The hostess called everyone to the palace. Well, I will have to say goodbye to my husband already. She asked him to take care of himself and wished him a happy journey. Elsa was as if immersed in water. What did Rolf want to say to her when he took her hand but couldn't? Only the girl and her children intended to spend the holiday as successfully as the meeting when they discovered a thief in the kitchen who had woven goodies. The guest asked Elsa who she was. She had not seen her before. The Archduchess said menacingly that she had the same question for the stranger. Wilbert thundered that she had come uninvited again. Wilbert snapped at her that His Majesty was not here and she needed to leave immediately. The uninvited guest protested that they are relatives. You can't behave so aggressively. Does Wilbert want to ruin her relationship with Rudy? They have vowed to marry. Why is he interfering? The boy menacingly remarked that she had thought this up herself. Elsa could not recover from what she had heard, but now was the least suitable moment for such confrontations. The Archduke's parents came right up. The mother recognized the girl as Lady Idona. Idona clapped her hands and joyfully exclaimed that she had not seen Mr. Stefan and Mrs. Evelina for a long time. The young lady decided to ask Rolf's parents once again who she was, but the Archduchess did not have time to answer. In her place, Mr. Stefan answered that she had become his son's wife by order of the Emperor. Elsa said her name. Idona immediately blurted out her conclusion that she was a spy, but Elsa replied that it was not so. The impudent young lady humiliated the Archduchess, saying that she was not suitable for her role and should hide in some corner. Wilbert stood up for the blonde. She is one of them, their family. An indignant Hugh ran up and took her hand. Idona and her parents were stunned. Elsa, feeling the support of all the household, introduced herself once more. She is the Archduchess, the wife of His Majesty Mr. Rolf. Although she does not know his past, she can ask. And she really wants to know which woman is suitable for the role of Grand Duchess. The girl was burning with anger, but spoke with restraint. She will simply perform the duties of the Archduchess. The uninvited guest was angry and could not understand by what right all this was happening. Evelina said, "Since things are like that, she will teach." Elsa was surprised. Would her husband's mother really teach her? The woman confirmed and said to ask what would be unclear. The blonde armed herself with this hope and thanked her heartily. She said that she did not even dare to dream about it. Evelina couldn't hold back her laughter. It's like she's cooking as a bride. Rolf's mother looked so similar to his wife that they could easily be confused. Idona was sour. The Archduke's mother promised to start immediately after the holiday. Idona immediately came forward to teach her. Evelina agreed. Liuka gloatingly poked Elsa with her finger. She will show her how to be a real Archduchess. Elsa stubbornly and confidently countered that she would be looking forward to it. She had a huge record of surviving in a toxic family. Out of surprise, Idona's finger even pointed to 6:30, while the unexpected opponent reasoned that she would never recognize Elsa as Rudy's couple. The Archduchess promised the children to try their best. The training began with an assessment of piano-playing abilities. Evelina laughed. What kind of song is this? Wilbert concluded that the rhythm was strange, and Hugh concluded that everything was wrong. Next, dancing. Hugh barely restrained Wilbert from an uncontrollable desire to stop this disgrace. Idona screamed that Elsa could not do anything at all. The Emperor probably underestimates them. Elsa confirmed this by breaking the pattern and putting Idona into a stupor, but she wondered why the blonde agreed. But it's true. The Emperor is cruel. Elsa expressed her own opinion absolutely sincerely. She well remembered what experiences she had to fight, going here, because of imperial ambitions. Evelina made the observation that, in fact, imperial music is very different from local music, so Lady Elsa will be slowly learning with Hugh. Elsa agreed. Hugh liked the idea very much. Wilbert was indignant, and Idona mentally equated the Archduchess with the youngest member of the family in terms of development. Evelina also had remarks about Lady Idona, and the young lady did not correct the mistakes. but Elsa unexpectedly praised her opponent's dance. Lady Idona blushed, either from unexpected praise or from anger. "Don't even think that flattery will help. It doesn't matter what kind of person it is. At stake is the post of the Duchess. She will not give in." After trying to work on fake singing and playing the piano in Elsa and Hugh, Evelina decided to move on to needlework and sewing, and here Elsa flashed her skill. Great! Who taught her? Elsa told her mother-in-law that she herself learned from books. Well, a blonde does not need training for manual labor, but Lady Idona was completely embarrassed by this. It is not so easy, but it is a technique that can be used to win a man's heart, and Evelina told Idonia about this from an early age. Bilyavka suggested that she start with small flowers. It's easier. Idona exploded and messed up the hook and thread. Does she enjoy making fun of her? Not at all. Elsa is just happy, because she did not have access to learning most disciplines and did not have the opportunity to go out into the world. Therefore, she is glad to be able to learn and communicate with her peers. Idona growled that she was delusional, to which Elsa began to apologize, but the girl roughly covered her mouth. She would not forgive her if she apologized now. Evelina said, "How interesting! Girlfriends! So, there is no way to avoid love topics." The girls simultaneously shouted, "What?" Rolf's mother put her grandsons outside the door and sent them to play with their grandfather, forbidding them from that moment to enter their girlish company. Then, deciding that something was missing for the right atmosphere, Evelina ordered the maids to bring desserts and decorated the room with magical inflatable balls, changed dresses. The mother-in-law asked what Elsa's type is. Is she beautiful in body or mind? Strong or kind? A graceful face, perhaps? The girl did not know. Then Evelina asked what she thought Rolf was like. Elsa remembered him as a father, as a ruler, and finally how he took her in his arms the day before, and blushed. The Archduchess replied that she was not ready to answer yet. Idona instantly understood everything and wrote it down. Evelina wondered if it was because too little time had passed. Bilyavka explained that he is a very busy person, so they spend little time together, but every day she discovers something new in him. For example, he reacted very sweetly when he noticed that his hair was disheveled. The mother-in-law praised the girl for this view of her strength. Now it is clear why he treats her like that. In this case, she is not in a worse position either, the opponent concluded. She and Rudy have exchanged ideas from an early age. She knows his tastes well, what he likes and what he doesn't like. Bertha always drank tea calmly, but this happened because the tastes were different. He loves sweets and fruits, but especially sweet chocolate, and his wife doesn't even know about it. Elsa was shocked. Why does he then drink coffee with cheese and not with sugar? Evelina confirmed that he doesn't need really sweet love, so Elsa will be the perfect woman for him, because she doesn't love him. It's fun to talk about love, but in reality, love gets in the way. Elsa is honest and hardworking, but not prone to love games, which is why she is an ideal for him. The magical rose in Evelina's hands withered. Elsa really cannot say that she loves him, but getting to know him every day, she is convinced of his kindness. And she wants to know him better. Even if she's not the perfect duchess. Idona was angry. Even if his partner is not good at anything, he himself is an impeccable duke. Elsa put her palm on Idonina and emotionally exclaimed that for sure, there is no way to get her out of my head. Mr. Rolf is cool. Now Elsa is just learning everything, but how can he think that until now he did everything himself? That's right, confirmed Idona. But Elsa still doesn't understand that he kept more than just the house. While Elsa was loudly bragging about how he covered her with a blanket, Evelina quietly said that she thought Rolf would no longer be alone. Little did they know that he had come to the door and heard it. Elsa decided to check how the children were and ran into Rolf at the door. The girl, who was already wrapped up in conversations about her ideal man, was overjoyed at this meeting and that he returned unharmed. When asked if he had heard the conversation that had just taken place in the room, Rolf replied that he had not. But his cheek showed that he had heard enough. Hearing that he had returned, the women came out. Rolf was angry that Idona had come again without permission. Everything they just said about him is the absolute truth. That's why Elsie is so embarrassed now. Lady Idona turned to the Grand Duke named Rudy and said that she needed to talk to him. He refused her. Not now. Telling Elsa that he will now submit a report to the Emperor, he asks his wife to prepare his report for the evening. Elsa was initially warned by Rolf, and today by Evelina, that there would be no love. But it hurts so much because of these conversations and vain hopes. And she promised to report back in the evening. It is necessary to behave with dignity. Suddenly he stopped her, grabbed her by the waist and by the handle, and introduced her to Idona and her mother as his wife. She has to do a lot of work in his absence. Therefore, he asks to support her as a family. Idona irritably asked if Rudy was sure. He categorically replied that Elsha is his woman. No one else can become her. The lady was indignant. He should have introduced her earlier. She was red from anger up to her ears. Tears appeared in her eyes. Because they are family. So they are her family, Elsha happily added. And Evelina noticed that in her absence he became more like Bert. The Archduke took it as a compliment and thanked his mother. Evelina had a sad look. In the evening, the blonde reported that she had received lessons from his mother while he was on a trip, and demonstrated how she learned to dance. Then she asked how his task was. Rolf replied that everything went well, and since Elsha was pulling his tongue, he added that the soldiers made the guests happy because of her and things went faster. This news made her very happy. After all, it is known that supporting soldiers brings almost the greatest pleasure and sense of need to a volunteer. Does he not want to tell if none of the soldiers are wounded? And what kind of bandits were they? Elsha asked if Rolf had taken a bath, and he said yes, but if the smell still remained, he would sleep in another room. Elsha didn't let him. When she thinks that he does his hair every time, she becomes embarrassed. She warmed the blanket. He can rest in peace. In this case, he will drink something and go to sleep. Elsha was happy to make him Swiss coffee, as he requested. He reasoned that the ideal Duchess is indifferent to him and does all the work clearly and has no downsides. Elsha, on the other hand, is the complete opposite of the ideal Duchess, as he thought. He smelled the scent he craved. It was Elsha who brought in a tray of drinks and apologized for the wait. She looked into his eyes openly and boldly. A blush played on her cheeks. Rolf asked why she brought hot chocolate. The girl explained that he actually wants chocolate, just like her. Why does he hide his tastes? She asks to open up. Noticing that Rolf looked away, the girl realized that she was not mistaken. Why is he cheating on her? She knew from the words of the chef that it was Mr. Berta who liked coffee. She said the chocolate was hard. Now she will go and warm up, and melted the thickened drink with the help of elemental magic. He finally tasted the chocolate. His first reaction was, how sweet. Elsha asked if it was too much. He said it was delicious. Previously, he drank even sweeter and added a lot of cream and honey. He wondered what the scent was. She replied that, a little zest and rum. He is tasting this for the first time, but it is similar to them, the people of the South, cheerful, energetic. He likes this chocolate. The girl blushed and blushed. She returned to heat her portion, but got burned. He instantly froze everything so that she wouldn't drop the dishes down. She thanked him confusedly. He ate a frozen piece of chocolate with childish playfulness. He said that it was also delicious cold. Despite her expectation, Elsha quickly fell asleep, but her dream was disturbing. She fought off Rolf in her dream. He just smiled and carefully covered her, remembering her words that he was cool. The girl felt sleepless, but preparations for the festival cannot wait, so she pulled herself together and continued to work. She immediately used the knowledge she received from the counselor. The blonde received fewer and fewer crosses from Zerka, but Idona continued to troll all her creations. But sometimes Lady Idona even improved some things with her magic, which greatly pleased her rival. It seems that Idona has come to terms with Elsha and Rolf's will, at least her questions. What magical performance the young Archduchess is planning sounded quite sincerely. Embarrassed, Elsha nervously swallowed a magic booster, but it did not help her in any way. Nothing good came out of her, despite the prejudice, since she is from a noble family. Then magic must be beautiful. When asked how she was going to get out, Wilbert and Hugh presented a secret plan. Historically, the law of force ruled in empires after the division of the continent into separate states. This is how the stereotype arose that the stronger the aristocrat's magic, the more weight he has in society. Wilbert asked Elsha to hold out her hand, and the palm caught fire. But the girl did not like this idea. She is not going to deceive anyone. This will be revealed quickly. Idona noted that the blonde can't even pretend. And it is not good to take magic from subordinates. The one used by aristocrats and the one used by servants are different. Elsha tried from an early age, but the only time she got an invitation and asked her stepmother to participate and was refused because she couldn't learn how to use magic. The girl trained day and night. She finally managed to generate heat. But the Duchess still refused Elsa, because Karen said that she would die of shame that her relative could only do such a small thing. Elsa asked everyone in the household to teach her magic, sincerely admiring everyone's skills. With endless overexertion and hundreds of attempts, the Archduchess's body was exhausted and she felt very sick. As you know, stress and anxiety block development and mental activity, and so did Elsa. She scolded herself for forcing everyone to help her, but she did not get the result. Wilbert said that there is no need to shame yourself and apologize. They are her family, so it is natural that they will help her. Hugh said that her efforts were not in vain because thanks to her, he learned a lot. The emotional girl hugged him tenderly. Then she called Wilbert to hug. Although the result is not visible now, it does not mean that one should not try. It's the eve of Rolf's birthday. Tomorrow it will be clear whether they will accept her. Gotta try one more thing. The Archduke arrested her for this. He wondered why she was up so late. She said she was repeating the dance. Suddenly, suspicion dawned on her and she exclaimed that she was not spying. Rolf was surprised and seriously said that he did not suspect her, but she thinks that it would be better for her to rest. Can she not sleep? Elsa shared her feelings that she could not calm down. He said he needed a partner for the dance and offered to help. At first she frowned and protested, but he insisted because he is her husband. She moved in his arms, a blush dancing on her cheeks. He picked her up when she almost fell and told her apologetically that it's okay, it's just training. Elsa praised him that he is also beautiful in dancing. He admitted that he did not like dancing and was often Idona's partner. In the morning, Elsa was frolicking. She had been selected a toilet in the shade of mint. It seems that even Idona got a little used to the gentle and kind Archduchess. Suddenly the rival asked if Elsa did not love Rolf. Idona explained that she does not love him at all, so you should not pay attention to her tantrums. Idona said that they were born in the same family and bear the same responsibility, although it is somewhat troublesome. Was she ashamed of her? Elsa said that it would be untrue if she said that she did not feel discomfort at all. But what is love? Idona was surprised. Even without knowing the answer, did Elsa give the correct answer to Mrs. Evelina? The rival suddenly poured paint to match her dress and hair, exploded, called the blonde a fool and rehearsed that she should not ask her such a thing. As a child, Elsa dreamed of family and love. Therefore, when she was told not to expect love, she became sad. But with her appearance in this house, she is happy every day. She doesn't want to break everything. She wants to look like a duchess, even if there is no love. The day before, when the man praised Elsa that she was already good at it, she opened her heart to Rolf. That at first she was afraid of him and thought that he was scary, but in fact he is kind and can do anything. He accidentally threw off her robe and she assured him that everything was fine. She said that on the day of his return they discussed him. But let him not worry. She has no romantic feelings for him. He was shocked. Here's how. Then he bent down, lifted the mantle, and wrapped the woman in it, because she thanked me. Rolf wanted to say something, but the clock struck midnight and he said it was time to go to bed. She thanked him for the class. He said he only did what he had to. They wished each other a good night and went their separate ways. Suddenly she ran after him, yelling for him to wait and clinging to his arm. She looked at him with her fiery eyes and wished him a happy birthday that had just arrived. She promised herself that everything would be fine in the afternoon. He was surprised, thanked her for her sensitivity, turned around again and stepped into the room. He blushed and touched the place on her hand where she had just grabbed him. In the afternoon, carriages began to arrive at the palace. It seemed that it was still night, but in fact it was already midday. At this time it was getting dark early. The children saw that the guests were coming and rushed to look for Elsa. They were dressed magically. Hugh could well be mistaken for a girl. When they saw her, they both blushed. She asked if they would not be ashamed of her if she was like that. Wilbert just flatly said no. Little Hugh rushed to her saying that Elsa is beautiful, he likes her. The kid asked if they would try together. The blonde answered firmly that yes. When Wilbert asked her if he liked it, he could not control his emotions, because he clearly liked it, turned away and told them to run. The hall was decorated with garlands and fabric lambrequins. Despite that, there was nowhere for the lords to sit down, so they had to get to know each other and communicate. Some man recognized Mr. Stefan. They had not seen each other for a long time. In order to talk, he first congratulated him on his son's birthday. Stefan answered that he was 26 years old. His interlocutor mentioned that Mr. Berta, but did not agree, because the father of the previous Archduke confirmed this guess. Another bearded man approached the couple with greetings, calling Stefan his brother. By the appearance of his wife, one could guess that these were the parents of Lady Adona. Stefan was surprised that his brother Benedict had come. The guest ironically asked that this time it could not be, that the heir is in poor health and will be absent. And I wonder what kind of wife he has. If we talk about their family, then this is a strong magic, thanks to which people can continue their existence. I wonder what abilities his wife has. Evelina agreed. And she is interested. Benedict said that he had heard rumors that the Archduchess was a nobody before that. Perhaps by accident, Hugh dropped his toy at the feet of the interlocutors to interrupt the conversation. With unaltered narcissism, the guest remarked that Hugh had grown a lot. He didn't even speak before. It seems, and still? The boy smiled sweetly at him. The woman scolded Benedict for insulting the child. But Hugh, lighting up the hall with his ice magic, solemnly and clearly welcomed the guests to their festival, instantly debunking all the rumors about himself. Benedict was extremely surprised, but these two discoveries, about the baby's ability to speak and use magical skills, were unpleasant for the man. Some of the people were surprised, some were happy with the snowflakes. Wilbert blew another snowflake, which grew into an ice crystal in the middle of the hall. A living blue dinosaur or dragon, which is basically the same thing, came out of this snowy haze and flapped its huge wings. Wilbert said that this is the time of the 1,000-Year War. He still had a snowflake in his hand. The boy continued his speech. The hero who sealed the dragon is the first Grand Duke of Eisbel, Diederich Eisbel. Family history, relatives guessed. This great blood was passed down from generation to generation. Splashes of hot chocolate flew out of the cook's vats and turned into a chocolate serpentine in the air. Rolf thought that Elsha made not only everyday duties, but also problems her allies. She stood and caught a chocolate streamer. Chocolate ribbons formed a large ball. Elsha, on behalf of her entire family, along with the servants, extended a kind invitation to the guests to the Isbel family. When people began to express their delight at the enchanting show and how they would eat this giant dessert, Elsha invited them to enjoy the main dishes first. Wilbert stopped by the little ones, so that even the smallest guests could eat comfortably. Everything was served in small pieces. Evelina praised that everything was luxurious and very warm, and she asked Stefan to enjoy the dishes for her. At this moment, the caring Hugh brought them a tray of snacks. Everything without salt, and you can eat, Grandma. Elsha added that they prepared all the dishes so that they could enjoy them. The emotional grandmother happily agreed to join the feast, following Hugh's suggestion. She almost burst into tears. Benedict came to meet the Archduchess. He praised the evening and asked when they could see her perform. He almost bought a show where she did almost nothing. And suddenly, as if accidentally, he poured wine on her dress. The children were angry. The family was shocked, but the girl assured that everything was fine and said that she would show everything. And she cold-bloodedly pinned the flowers to the stain.